Snook, please keep me anonymous. Forgive me for the long confession. I don't ask for forgiveness. I'm not justifying my actions. I don't wish for sympathy. I understand if you do not believe my confession, and I don't blame you. I wouldn't believe it either if it didn't happen to me. I'm 32 years old. English isn't my first language, but I've lived with it long enough that it doesn't get in the way anymore. I'm writing this from memory, and memory is messy. Some things are clear, some things come out in pieces. I'm not asking to be understood. I just need this out of my head. This happened in 2010, in a small town outside the city of Durango. Not rural enough to disappear completely, not big enough to matter. The kind of place where everyone knows who you are, but nobody knows what you're really doing. My mother raised me and my little sister alone. She was 4 years old at the time. I was barely a teenager, old enough to understand money, young enough to believe hard work fixed everything. My father wasn't around, and I don't know when he left or why. My mother didn't talk about him. She worked as a maid for families who lived better than we did, cleaning houses that were quiet, organized, and nothing like ours. She would take me with her sometimes, leaving my sister with our neighbor. Eventually, it became my first job. I helped carry things, cleaned patios, washed cars, did whatever I was told. I didn't complain. I didn't ask questions. I learned early that silence kept you fed. One of the clients noticed that. He liked that I didn't talk. He said it more than once. He'd laugh and say I had the right mentality, that I understood how the world worked. I didn't know then what he really did for a living. I knew enough to know I shouldn't ask. After a while, he offered me another kind of work. He didn't call it anything dangerous. He just said he needed someone to watch, to stand around, observe, and tell him if anyone unfamiliar came into the area. Rival groups. He didn't use words like cartel at first. He offered to pay me more than my mother earned in a week, and I said yes. That was my first step into it. I didn't feel like I chose it. It felt like something that was already happening, and I just didn't step out of the way. I became what they call a halcón. I stood on corners, near stores, beside main streets. I watched cars, faces, movements. I memorized things without writing them down. I would report back to him every night. Months passed and nothing ever changed, but I still got paid. My mom knew, but not enough to point out. My sister still laughed, and my mom still came back tired and smelling like cleaning chemicals. Then the same man offered me more work, deliveries, drop a bag off and bring back a stack of cash. No talking, no delays. I wasn't stupid. I knew what was in the bag. But I have come to learn that knowing and asking are different things. Asking gets you killed. Doing gets you paid. The money helped. We ate better. My sister had shoes that fit. My mother stopped crying at night, at least where I could hear it. The man started showing up more. Not just at the house, but on the street near where I waited. I shrugged it off as a coincidence. I realized now that I had already been recruited. I just hadn't been told yet. The first few deliveries were simple. Walk a few blocks, catch a bus, leave the bag somewhere, return with the cash. The money was heavy in my hands. It smelled like sweat, rubber bands, and paper. I didn't feel powerful. I felt responsible. My mother's eyes when I handed her the money. They were grateful but tired. She never asked questions until one delivery went wrong. I was held at gunpoint and robbed of the bag. I didn't fight. I froze. I went back empty-handed. I expected to die that night. Instead, I was handed a gun. I'd held guns before. Everyone had, but this was different. This one came with expectations and responsibility. I was told it wouldn't happen again, and I believed them. Life went on. I tried to forget it. I almost did. Then one day, with no warning, I was told I had a job to do the next day. Not watching, not caring, killing. They needed someone who didn't stand out. Someone young, somebody nobody would notice. For the first time, I said no. The man who hired me got angry. Not loud, but calm. I found that worse in a weird way. He told me if I didn't do it, I would disappear. Not arrested, not fired, gone. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about my sister. about my mother coming home and not finding me. I told myself it was my life or a stranger's life, and mine mattered more. That's the truth. I won't pretend otherwise. The next day I waited. I had never fired a gun before. I was shaking so badly I could hear it in my head. When the man came into view, I panicked. I pulled the trigger and missed. The bullet went past his head. The sound alone sent him running. I stood there like an idiot, knowing what would happen next. I searched for him until my legs hurt and the sun started drooping. I didn't find him. I went home to find my sister alone. My mother wasn't there. At first, I told myself she was late. Then I told myself she'd stayed overnight. By the next day, I knew. The same man who hired me had killed her while she was cleaning his house. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. I only understood when she never came back. My sister kept asking for her, crying, pulling at my shirt. I told her our mother went to the United States for a better job. I said it without thinking. She believed me. That lie haunts me to this day. I used what money I had left to leave town. I bought a car that barely ran with rust everywhere. I told my sister I found work somewhere else. I told myself I was saving her and I believed it. I left her in a daycare while I looked for someone to get us across the border. I found a coyote, paid him. We were supposed to leave the next day. When I came back, the daycare told me her father had picked her up. I didn't even understand the words at first. I demanded details. They didn't have any. A man, average height, busy day, too many kids. I never saw her again. I stayed 3 days. No sleep, asking strangers, asking places I shouldn't have, nothing. On the third night, I stopped trying. I tried to commit S-word by hurting myself with a rope and a tree outside town. The rope snapped. I fell hard and laughed like a crazy person. Then I screamed at God until my throat burned. I didn't want to die before that night. After that night, I didn't want to live, but I was desperate for an exit, for salvation. I worked small jobs, helping the elderly with demanding chores, fixing up lawns, helping street vendors sell goods, all while keeping my head down to not draw any past attention again. An old woman took pity on me. She said I worked hard. I lied to her, told her I was a runaway from an abusive household. Not the best thing to do, but survival doesn't leave room for honesty. She let me stay at her house. That same night, I stole from her. I'm not proud of that, but I won't lie about it. I paid another coyote. Crossed the Rio Bravo. Almost drowned. Made it across. Ran from canines. Hid from lights. Ended up in the back of a truck that took me deeper into Texas where I now live. I got a job at a construction site. At 24, I got a work permit. No green card. No family. I've tried to remain alive since then, but I don't know if that's the same thing as living. I don't expect forgiveness. I'm writing it because it's been 12 years and it still wakes me up some nights. And I'm tired of being the only one who knows. That was my confession. And then the emailer leaves a PS saying, P.S. If you're young and hearing this and are thinking of any part of this sounds powerful or exciting or like a shortcut out of poverty, listen to me carefully. There is nothing brave about this. There's nothing loyal about it. Nobody protects you. Nobody remembers you. You are not a brother, not a soldier, not important. You are a tool. And tools get replaced when they break. It doesn't start with blood. That's a lie. It starts with watching the corner, carrying the bag, staying quiet. You tell yourself you're not hurting anyone. You tell yourself it's temporary. You tell yourself you're doing it for your family. Then one day you're standing there somewhere you never imagined, holding something you can't put down anymore. And every option in front of you is wrong. People talk about money like it fixes things. It doesn't. The money disappears. The hunger comes back. The fear never leaves. What stays is the guilt, the faces you can't forget, and the nights where your chest feels heavy for no reason and you can't explain to anyone else. You don't rise. You don't become anything. You decay slowly while pretending you're in control. And when it's over, if you're lucky enough to survive, there is no redemption waiting for you. No apology that brings anyone back. No border you can cross that makes you feel clean again. You just carry it. Quietly. Forever. If you still have a choice, take it. Even if it feels small. Even if it feels humiliating. Even if it feels like you're going nowhere. Because nowhere is still better than this. And just wow. This was truly one of the most intense confessions I have ever read in my entire career of reading confessions, period, on Reddit or viewer submitted. This just has a level of intensity I have never felt before reading a confession, if that makes sense. And I don't even know what to say. I truly don't have any words for this. It just was so intense. I mean, that's just the word that keeps coming to mind. Just it felt intense and sorrowful. But yeah, I have no words. I mean, other than there is a good moral to take from this. If you are young or not even young, if you're in any position where you think the only way out is through dealing or doing some other sort of illegal activity, it's not good. It's better to just keep doing nothing than doing that, because doing nothing is better than this, like the OP said at the end, or the emailer said at the end. Just wow. I just don't have any words. This just took the words out of my mouth, and I don't know what to say. But please, everyone watching, comment down below what you think about this, because I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this. And thank you to the viewer who submitted this confession. Redditor loses over $800,000 gambling and hides it from his family. And the first post is, I lost $100,000 in 4 weeks. I need advice. I'm 36 years old and not in debt other than a mortgage. I have an 8-month-old daughter and I'm scared to death. I've been gambling somewhat randomly since college. I'm well over $300,000 now in losses, most of which was my money, and now $100,000 just in the last 4 weeks. And every time I went back, it was to recover from the day before, but the numbers kept adding up. My wife doesn't know a thing. The money is mine, $100,000 gifted by my dad, who is completely against even wasting a dollar, and who put his trust in me to use it wisely for family, success, or paying down my mortgage. I'm a terrible son. I feel shame and regret to even look him in the eye, knowing what I've done in a matter of weeks. It took many years for him to make. I still feel I need to go back to get it back. My wife doesn't know yet, keyword. It'll be a very ugly convo when she finds out. Maybe even walk out on me, who knows? That kind of money isn't easy to hide, right? I feel depressed, broken, failure. I just want this $100,000 back. It's just too much to lose. A $10,000 loss turns to $15,000, and then $7,500, and just downhill from there. I lost all $22,500 and kept going back, losing $10,000 to $15,000 per day at times. What should I do? Talk to my wife? She will lose it. And if my dad finds out, I'm afraid he won't be able to take it, and I'll be the reason for what happens to him. I'm such a bad son. And then the OP makes another post about a month later saying, rock bottom, painful truth, and unsure what the future holds. He says, hey guys, 36 male, and I've posted quite a bit, so in response to my first post, I say this. Listen to every word people say here. Something took over me. I can't explain it because I don't know myself what the fuck happened. Losing money is evil. It will make you do things out of control. The fight to recover losses kept turning into a losing battle over and over again, so here I am, rock bottom. In just 2 months, I've lost everything in my bank account, $170,000, and also took out $10,000 from credit card and another $10,000 from personal line of credits, so I'm officially in a gambling debt of $20,000. Now that's a total of $170,000. $190,000. And it's a harsh reality. What does it feel like? Butterflies in your stomach. The earth just slipped from under your feet and you feel light, but there's weight pushing you down. Disbelief because the gambling mind cannot accept what happened, but then reality kicks in because the bank is proof. Shame, disgust, S-word thoughts, frown but pretending to smile. Wife doesn't know yet of my situation, so I'm lying to my partner. Always a bad thing. 9-month-old daughter whom I now feel like I've ruined a comfortable life for alongside my wife. I first posted at a $100,000 loss. Everyone said, stop, stay clean, tell the truth. It doesn't get better. I continued to go back over and over again because I could not accept it. Bottom line, accept it now, or you're going to be where I am. Now over $500,000 in losses, out of which $190,000 is very recent. This is the end reality. It feels a lot worse than when you win a single bet. And that's not the last post. There's a lot of posts after this, but I mean, this is just so terrifying to me. Just the addiction of gambling. Gambling is just such a trap. And I mean, I hope a lot of you guys know this, but I mean, it's just not worth even doing once. It's like any other drug. It's like, would you try H once? Would you try crystal once? Probably not. But people are so casual about gambling. They're like, oh, it's fine. Just put $5 on the game. That $5 turns to 10. That 10 turns to 20. The 20 turns to 100. And then soon enough, you're losing thousands of dollars. And you think you can win it back. You think you can win it back. And this is just obvious gambling addiction. But it just can start so casually and then spiral into something like this. And this might not be like the conventional terrifying confession where someone confessed they killed somebody. But this is just the confession of someone ruining their life because they just ruined his daughter's life and his wife's life. I mean, imagine knowing or not knowing your partner is losing all of his money that takes care of you and your kid. That is beyond terrifying to me. But anyways, let's move on to his next post, titled Struggling to Forget and Complete Wreck, posted about 10 days later. And the post reads as follows. Update from previous posts. Life feels very depressing. Love playing with my daughter, and every time I look at her, the thought crosses my mind. Why did I blow my money at the casino where I should have used it for a future? College, car, real estate, necessities, and the list goes on. Have not told the wife yet, nor has she poked into the bank account that would show nothing but withdrawals in the thousands for the last 2.5 months. Losing strength. Stress is killing me because I picked up debt to gamble and lost everything. Casinos are temporarily shut down effective today, so good that I can't go to relapse. I need to tell the wife. Don't have the courage because I can't explain how I didn't learn a lesson, but ended up losing $200,000. I don't know if she'll understand, and I'm also afraid of the shame this brings once everyone in the family finds out. Killed my self-esteem. I'm a wreck and stressed to no end. To those reading this, stay strong. Let's get rid of this horrible demon. And something I forgot to say about before the last post, like he also took his dad's money and used it. I mean, not only did he destroy his own financial career, he destroyed the faith that his father had in him, which is not material, but that is so horrible and sad. I mean, how will OP's father ever trust him again? He gave him $100,000 to take care of his family with, and he wasted it gambling. God, just so sad. His next post was titled, Day 1 starts, $275,000 lost, posted about 2 months later. And the post reads as follows. Game over. I kept going back to recover big losses, and now I'm sitting here after literally 4 months exact. $200,000 missing. $75,000 of debt between credit cards and line of credit. Barely any money left except to survive. I have a family who doesn't know of this. Many of you know my story on here. I haven't told significant other, and she's on a trip with the young one. I thought I could take the opportunity to go back to the casino to recover, but that didn't happen. Instead, I found myself pulling money from creditors to gamble, but just lost it all. I know my performance at work has been affected. I am a completely different person physically in the mirror. The stress has taken that smile and brightness. Fuck gambling. I am sick and I'm going to get better. This is day one, and here's the plan. Number one, use Helllock to pay off the expensive debt. 2, refinance the home for $100,000 when mortgage is up for renewal in August. Pay off the Helllock. 3, significant other and hope she can support my recovery instead of walking away. The news, I understand, will be a lot to stomach. 4, get healthy and back in shape. 5, cut down on spending/eating out. 6, find a side hustle / part-time job. 7, attend Gamblers Anonymous meetings if I can. I wish I could reverse that last 4 months. I can't, so now I'll spend the next decade trying to recover. My life is a wreck, and I cannot live like this any longer. And holy shit, this just keeps getting worse. He lost even more money. And still, he hasn't told his significant other or his family. I mean, he's just digging a deeper and deeper hole. Not only financially, but what's going to happen when his significant other finds out? She's going to be like, you haven't told me this for 4 months now? You've been hiding this behind your back for 4 months and you keep going back? I mean, I don't understand. I mean, obviously, it is very shameful. It is very sad. But why doesn't the OP tell his significant other so she can help hold him accountable, if that makes sense? It's like, I would rather not go through this alone, but at the same time, I understand why it would be so shameful to even tell anyone. But still, just wow. And the next post is titled, Self-Excluded Indefinitely Day 1. Posted a few days later. He says, relapsed and couldn't stop. I put my life on the line. Thought about S-word, and only thing holding me down to earth is my daughter, wife, and family whom I let down. They don't have a clue as to what I have done. Number 1, gambled away my own money in some inheritance. 2, picked up $70,000 debt. 3, dipped into wife's account and took another $50,000. I am now walking out of this miserable place, the casino, that has taken everything from me mentally and financially in the last 6 months. $325,000 lost, and same amount in prior years. I am $600,000 plus in losses, and there's only one way to stop. I have it in my hand, a win today. Willpower, backed up by self-exclusion form banning indefinitely. Now the truth must be told to my wife, and I need to protect my family from me. I don't know if I will have a family should my wife not be supportive, but at least I've done what I never thought I would do. Stop gambling, guys. Nobody wins. This industry will take you to your grave a lot faster than God. And oh my God, $600,000 in debt. Jesus Christ. That is just, I mean, obviously, $100,000 is a lot of money. That is a ton of money. But $600,000 is just a different level. That is the level you'll have to be paying it off your entire life. Especially if that's on high credit interest. I mean, oh my God, this is just getting worse and worse. And the OP makes another post a few months later, and the post is titled, Told the wife, it's done. She now came out over phone because I was at work. Bawled out like crazy, said sorry, she's pissed and not responding to text now, giving her some space. If I go home, either she's there or gone, who knows. Work sucks right now, want to get out ASAP, but can't yet. Will be a hectic night, maybe limited convo if there is one. I finally got this off my chest, and although nervous, I feel good because it was slowly killing me inside with depression and S-word thoughts. ODAAT, living with consequences of our actions, I suppose. And that's great he told his wife, but I'm very interested to see how this goes. And he makes a post 2 days later saying, hey all, I wanted to give you all an update on my full disclosure for many of you who have seen my posts. Ultimate rock bottom is not money lost. It's trust. That's what I said earlier. For those of you that are single, you still lose trust. My wife, who I don't blame, has opened up to her family and to mine. I feel humiliated, regretful, wish this has never happened, but I also think it's for the betterment and recovery. Time will heal, but the healing has to start. For those who have yet to share with family about your problems, do so. It's hard at first. Stress level rises 10,000 times in the moment, but in the end, it is what it is. Consequences of actions. I chose to be a better person. I finally got rid of this problem and all others that cause pain to loved ones. The years of respect I earned, lost. I feel terrible, but I deserve this. Going to move on now and put the past behind me. News will spread like wildfire and humiliation will continue. In the end, it is what it is, as there's no rewinding time but change the future. Good luck. I'm proud to own my mistakes, and for me, that's a huge win. Weight of the world off my chest. Say no to gambling. Become a winner once and for all. And then the OP makes a post titled 135 Days Gambling Free. And the post reads as follows. Hey everyone, haven't posted here for a very long time. 135 days gambling free. Here's how I did it. Lost $300,000 in 6 months. Went into serious regretfulness, depression, and insane amounts of stress. Came to Jesus and banned myself from all land-based casinos. This was step 1 to freedom. Confessed everything to family. Step 2. Went to hell and back because of it. Lost respect, trust, love. Held on to marriage, but it was brutal. Starting to gain back. Step 3. Luckily, work got very busy. Kept my mind occupied, which helped out a great deal. I cannot forgive myself. Losses and pain I've caused my loved ones bothers me all the time, but I don't think about wanting to ever go back to gambling again. Huge. Step 4. Self-realization. Good luck to no gambling. And just, that's great. I mean, that is just great. 135 days is huge. And that's great. He, was able to go that long without gambling and was able to start gaining back the trust and love that he so deeply lost, and understandably so. But then the post makes an update about 7 months later. And the title is, Did It Again, Need Desperate Advice. So much for a ban. Urged to reinstate, and I did. I won $40,000 from $3,000. Put it all back, plus $30,000 gradual losses of $5 to $6K after putting back $20K the next day. $30,000 debt. No way to repay all the finances or handled by a significant other. What do I do? Last time was a family crisis. Now I have no choice but to turn to my parents again and say, bail me out like last time. The problem is, the last time I should have learned my lesson. I really don't know what to do. I can't tell anyone about this recent events or else I'm doomed and I will really hurt my loved ones. If this comes out, however it may, I'm definitely getting divorced. I got a wife and kid who I don't want to lose. I want to tell my parents that I had this loan from the last event that turned my whole life upside down, but I fear this will put them through hell and back knowing how they can't trust me. I make good money, but can't use it now that partner controls the finances. Your thoughts? How should I handle this? And just, that is crushing. That is just so crushing how he went, it seems like 7 months, and he just went back. That is just so crushing. And then he makes another post saying, hit rock bottom again. It's over for me. Posted about a month later. And the post reads as follows. Hey all, please stop gambling. I relapsed and now with $40,000 debt and no way to repay considering the situation I'm in where partner controls finances. I cannot let anyone know about this or it's gonna be a huge problem. I just can't believe I put myself through this again. I don't even have money left from the last round of stupidity. No more access to loans and I've already borrowed from friends and family. Now I'm sitting with $500 in my account right now with bills on the way. This shit sucks so bad. I just wish I could do something bad to himself. This financial stress is so bad. I need help, but don't know if my partner will be so supportive this time if they find out. And yeah, the OP got himself in deep shit again because he came clean with his significant other, his family, and they, lost trust but supported him. And the second time around, obviously, is going to be a lot harder for them to support him. So yeah, he is in deep, deep shit. And then the OP makes a post again 3 weeks later saying, anyone in relapse and tell their partner. And the post reads, struggling to find some courage to tell my spouse that I fucked up a second time and how miserable of a husband/father I am. Worked so hard to dump our money to a casino. I already got my ultimatum the last time after massive losses. Here I am again, reliving the past, except this time is all out debt only. My head is going to explode. I'm super stressed and I don't know what to do. Anyone tell their significant other of a relapse? And how did that go? And then it makes a post a few days later saying, if you're given a second chance, but you relapse and out yourself through the same shit again, is this a calling to get help? And the post reads, maybe some of you read my post. I'm in a devastating situation again and have no guts to share with anyone. I got a second chance. Banned myself. Year later, same boat, and now badly in debt. I keep thinking what got me to gambling. I work hard to earn the money, but money doesn't hold great value to me. Why? Well, I think I have an answer. Throughout my younger years, my pops never let me manage my finances. He always checked my accounts. Always wanted to be the one to manage. Always led me to believe what he got is mine one day. He's not rich, just normal. I never felt in control and I never learned to manage well because it was just money, but I see young people now so cautious of their finances. I'm not sure if what I'm thinking is wrong. I really don't want to blame my parents, but I wish if I had the freedom to manage my earnings and expenses in my younger years, I wouldn't chase easy money. And I mean, I don't see a correlation there, but who knows? I got a gambling problem, I admit it now. I need help, and I'm certainly devastated by the outcome. Debt upon my eyeballs. Earn good money, but people got bills to pay and need to survive, so irregardless, it's an unnecessary expense to have all these debt payments. Try to have my spouse manage the finances. Instead, I pulled out loans behind their back. Do I deserve a third chance, or should this be it? Divorce and destruction. And I was curious about the comments on this post, and the only comment is, the only person you can blame is yourself. And it has 3 upvotes. He's not going to allow help. This is just devastating. Then the OP says, help, someone give me some courage to break the news and how to begin telling people. How do I tell my wife about my relapse? This is killing me. How do I tell her that I broke her trust again? Put us again in a bad situation. This is crazy. This shit ruins lives, man. Here I am, a grown-ass man, crying like a wussy. Have no control, no realization to my actions. Can't do anything other than putting my loved ones in pain and suffering. God, I can't deal with this. What do I do? Someone please give me advice. God, this is getting emotional. This is just crazy. Then he says, anyone here relapsed and racked up 6-figure debt? Posted a few months later. And then he says, miserable, looking for anyone who can relate and help with a solution and or advice. Last year, terrible, huge losses in the mid 6 figs. Confessed and banned and returned to the devil. Now using up all the great credit built up over many, many years. Picked up $200,000 debt at pretty harsh interest from multiple bullshit places. Life in complete turmoil. Unhappy, depressed, mentally effed up, stressed to no end. Regrets. Unfaithfulness with spouse, fake smiles, hidden cries, you name it, because it's by far the worst list. Numb to value of money between 4 walls of the devil's house. Outside the reality hits hard. Now sitting back thinking, why did I do it? Approaching 40, which gives me the chills. Anyone relate? What do I do? Can't face a second confession. No heart or strength for that. And then the OP makes a post about 2 months later saying, came clean the second time. Just confessed to wife, heartbreak. Don't know what's going to happen now. I deserve any and all punishment again at this point. Couldn't avoid coming clean because the lies and double life I couldn't stand living no more. I hope I come out stronger for our family. And then the OP post 2 weeks later saying, relapse. Today, for the second time, I feel so humiliated again because of my relapse. Had my family walk out the door. and I'm here all alone. More than money, I lost love, and I lost trust. Quit gambling, people. And then the OP makes a final update about 2 months later, titled Ruined Myself and Lost Everything. And the post reads as follows: Wife left with the kid. Debt in over my head. Completely destroyed myself financially because I'd have to sell my house to repay it. Once again, the house is won, and we continue to think we can beat them. What I don't get is how I let this get to where it is without thinking of the consequences and to make it worse. I had ample time to dwell on repeat mistakes. What the hell is this rush? It's the worst fucking drug in the world. This one not only ruins you, but also your family. Mentally, I'm a wreck. I only wish I could make it out on top. Restart at 40. That's where I've ended up. And then the OP just keeps making small posts and updates. And I read at one point he lost $1 million lost in a 5-year span. Jesus Christ. $1 million lost. And he just keeps posting on how he's an addict and how he's alone and how his wife left him and he has nothing left anymore. And yeah, his final comment ever on his profile was, I can relate, but I'm not where you are yet. I truly wish I can think this way someday. Sooner than later, still processing the defeat. Leave 7 figures aside. Family gone. Home lost. Thanks for the post. Satisfied me knowing there's more to life than money. So it's pretty clear that the OP lost $1 million or up to $1 million in that time, lost his family, and then lost his home. This is truly one of the saddest spirals I have ever seen on Reddit. I've seen multiple kind of drug use spirals, but this is just a different level. I mean, he just lost hundreds, or literally, like he said, $1 million. $1 million to gambling. He lost his home. He lost his family. He lost fucking everything. And it's just so terrifying and sad and depressing. And this was just one hell of a saga, if you can even call it that. I mean, this was over a year or so, like, of consistent posts. And just, Jesus, guys. If any of you are watching with a gambling addiction, please reach out to Gamblers Anonymous. It will get better, but please just stop gambling. You will never beat the house. Ever. I was a crystal addict at 13. And by crystal, I mean the drug. And let's get into it. Hey Snook, thanks for taking the time to read these confessions. I hope you're doing well. And I'm doing great, thank you so much for asking. And let's get into it. I apologize for this, as it may be a long read. Without getting into too much detail, I'd like to give some backstory. The day after my 11th birthday, my dad passed away. Being an extremely innocent kid, I didn't really understand the concept of death. I didn't understand my dad was forever gone until I saw my mom completely spiral. Immediately after news of his death, my mom threatened to harm us and then tried to commit S-word. She got sent away on a 5250, a 14-day psychiatric hold. Surprisingly, we weren't taken away. My brother took care of us until my mom came back. And 6 months later, we moved to Las Vegas. In Vegas, she dated her ex-abusive husband, who is the father of my 2 eldest siblings. My other brother and I are the children of the one who passed. My mother immediately became addicted to crystal and other various drugs, and he was a drug dealer. I was homeschooling for 6th grade at the time, but my mom didn't help me at all, and I didn't know how to turn in assignments, so I failed. I was a curious child, and seeing them do it made me curious as to what it was. I'm not sure how it started, but I acquired my own crystal pipe. My stepdad gave me some crystal, and I learned how to smoke it. I was 13. I met someone who was 17 or 18 at the time, and I started dating him. He had a child with another woman, and he cheated on me consistently. I did more drugs to cope with it. My drug use spiraled heavily. The withdrawals I felt from the crystal were the worst pains I've ever felt in my life. It felt like my stomach was tearing open and my body was dying. I did everything you can think of: pills, alcohol, cannabis, crystal, and booger sugar. I mixed things, Did pills with alcohol to feel something. I did crystal the most though, 10 plus times a day or more. I even did it with my mother to bond with her. I was drawn from school, missing over 90 days in one semester. I was extremely malnourished. While all of this was going on, my mother rarely fed me. Money was prioritized for drugs. Money coming in from my dad's life insurance. I wore hand-me-downs from my mom, which were not appropriate for school or for a 13-year-old. The abuse from my stepdad was excessive to my mom. He threw into a mirror one time and threatened to stab me with a spoon. This was normal. This was my normal. Anytime they'd fight, they'd blare music. They do that often. To bond with me, my stepdad would take me to motels and have me deal drugs for him. Here, I was SA'd by my stepdad's friend. We'd go to crack houses, and I moved out for 3 months to squat in an abandoned house with my boyfriend at the time and 2 homeless men. I was 14. I vividly remember the toilet being full of maggots, needles everywhere, and I slept on a futon with no mattress. I came back home, and my room was full of bed bugs. I mean, falling from the ceiling type of infestation. Thousands upon thousands. So I moved downstairs and slept on the couch. This is when I got really depressed. Like, really depressed. My boyfriend at the time started hurting me. I tried to commit S-word with an excessive amount of pills and passed out in the bathroom. My mom saved me. I hated her for it. My mom also threatened to self-delete often. That's what the original writer wrote, especially if I sided with my stepdad, which I never really talked about much, so I didn't side with anyone. My boyfriend shortly after punched me, and he almost broke my ribs. I kicked him in self-defense, and he tried to OD as well. I gave him CPR, not understanding how to help. I was panicking. My stepdad threw ice on him, and somehow that revived him. I was more scared about the police than him dying. That's how my parents conditioned me. When he got better, which was a few days later, he did something to himself and wrote, "I'm sorry" in blood on my bedroom door. That was my final straw. I had my grandpa drive him to the other side of town, and I broke up with him. About 6 months after that, my eldest brother gave me the opportunity to move out. Nobody knew the extent of how bad it was at my mom's. Nobody lived there but me. I had no phone, no connections to anybody. It was meant to be that way. I don't know what inspired me to get better, but I took the opportunity. I had my friend lock me in a room with no access to drugs, and I quit cold turkey. Dumbest decision of my life. I don't remember much besides the pain. I did end up moving out, and while what I went through here is another story for another time, I currently am in a much better place. I'm sober for 8 years, I have full restraint from drugs, and I'm happy. I'm thankful for my brother endlessly for saving my life. I'm not sure what would have happened if he didn't reach out. My mom is homeless now, so I'm sure my life would have reflected that. To those of you who still are here, I hope you take the opportunity to be thankful for the good things in your life. And please, for me, stay away from drugs. It's not fun. It will ruin your life. It doesn't help. It makes you numb and blind to the bad things around you. Thank you for reading, Snook. Have a great day. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this, and I can only feel so horrible for you. I mean, you grew up in just the worst possible conditions, and I'm so sorry you went through that, but I'm happy that you've been able to get out of that. 8 years sober, that's amazing. That's amazing. Great job. And I'm so happy that you've turned your life around, and I hope that your mom can get better soon, and I hope everyone you knew from back then gets better as well. And I just believe in you to keep improving your life as much as you can, and I just wish you nothing but the best. Thank you so much for sharing. On to the next one. My father has an intimate relationship with my grandmother, and I had to use intimate as an interchange, but it's the sex word. Wow, that is a very interesting title. Let's get into this. Hi, Snook. I really enjoy watching your videos and have probably watched 90% of them. LOL. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That means the world. I'm writing this confession to you because I feel like you can give me some real advice on how to deal with the situation. And I haven't told anyone about this thing. So my father is 16 years older than my mother. And my grandmother, my mother's mom, is only 7 years older than my father. So here's the background of the entire thing. My parents met at work and they dated for only 3 months before deciding to get married. My mom was only 20 back then. One day before my parents got married, my mom wasn't home, and that time my father came over to my mom's house where she lived with my parents. At the time, my grandfather wasn't home either, so only my grandmother was at the house when my father came without any notice. I don't know what happened between them exactly. Neither does my mom know, but she said that when she got home around 5 to 6 p.m., she saw my father and grandmother were both looking very tired and sweaty. It looked as if they were doing something really tiring. My mom asked them indirectly about what they were doing, and they said that they were just talking. My mother was too innocent to understand anything. Actually, I believe she was just not ready to accept the truth that she already knew. Later, even one of the neighbors told my mother that my father, at the time fiance, would often visit my mother's house when my grandfather and mother weren't there. I got to know all of this when I was old enough. My mom was still very suspicious, and even me and my siblings were, but my suspicions were proven right a year ago. My grandmother had recently bought a phone, and she is not that good with smartphones. One day she came over to our house and I handed her my phone to manage something, and I was doing exactly what she told me when suddenly I read this notification of a text that came from my father on her phone. This text read, "Do you want to see a picture that I had taken of you? Winky emoji," which sounded very flirty. And also, I've never seen my father and grandmother together alone in the same room ever. So how did he even get a picture of her? I was too surprised that I even thought that maybe he meant to text my mom or something and accidentally sent it to my grandmother. As this was happening, my father sent another set of winking emojis, and I accidentally opened the text, which resulted in him knowing that the chat was opened. So I texted him from my grandmother's phone, "Hey dad, I'm fixing something on Granny's phone currently," and I accidentally opened the text, and he deleted his previously sent texts as soon as he understood that I had seen them. This confirmed mine and my mother's doubts. Though I don't have any actual evidence, it still feels he did cheat on my mother with my grandmother. I don't know how to feel about this situation. Please, Snook, help me make my mind clear. And I don't have a lot of initial ideas because, wow, this is just a lot of pressure on me now. You just put it on me, all on me. I don't know how to feel about the situation, but that is a very interesting, scenario. Yeah, it is very weird. They were seen together, very tired, so that means they could have been doing something. You know what something is. And the winking emoji, and do you want to see the pictures I have of you? Winky emoji, that is very obviously flirtatious. I mean, there is no evidence that they were doing anything intimate. That would be wild if they were, because that's your grandma, and that's your father's. Oh Jesus, that's your mother's grandma. Yeah, that's just, I don't know how the family dynamics work, but that is just very, very, very weird. I mean, the grandma isn't that much older than him, but still, regardless, it's weird. What I would do personally, if I were you, just tell your mom exactly what you saw and try not to get involved. I would not try to be a detective and try to figure it out, because in all honesty, that's not really your business. That's more of your mom's business, I would say. And maybe your dad, maybe even confront your dad about it. I don't know. I don't have great advice about this. And this is just has me kind of starstruck, because this is just such a unique confession. But I don't know. And this was sent in about a few months ago, so I'm sure the OP or the emailer has done something by now. But if you are watching this, please send me an email. What ended up happening? Because this is just a wild, wild, unique confession. But everyone watching, what do you guys think? Reddit confession. I paid somebody overseas to have the man who assaulted me attacked. Sorry, this is long, and sorry for the anonymity, plus spelling mistakes in advance. English is my third language. First things first, I am male 27. I was born and raised in East Africa. I have a huge extended family. On my dad's side, there are 13 of them, so you can imagine. My grandma was pretty well off. She had a big house and big farm. A big farm meant many day laborers slash workers. They used to come and go in the evenings, get paid some little change. She was also very kind, and she also used to help some of the workers in various ways. One of the ways was giving them extra food on the top of their pay, etc. There was this one older lady who apparently had worked for her even before I was born. My grandma put her last born son through school, and all he had to do was help in the home. He used to stay at my grandma's house during the weekend. This guy was always very nice to my cousins and I. He was just good to us. When I was about 8, 9, or 10 or so, he took the niceness to the next level. Long story short, he bought some juice boxes or something, then lured me into his shed. He then assaulted me. To be honest, I really don't want to remember this. Shit gives me nightmares. I knew what he did was wrong because he promised to keep buying whatever candy slash juice box he had. I did keep quiet. One day, I saw him and my little cousin, who is 5 years younger than me, and get all friendly, and I asked my cousin what happened. He admitted to me that he had lured him too. The sad thing is me and this cousin grew older and left for high school, I think. Unfortunately, like I said, we had a big family, which means I had more younger cousins. Note, being gay in Africa is almost a taboo. I think things are changing slowly now. Not sure though. We never talked about this ever. We were in high school and one of my uncles told him to go to his city and work for him. My uncle was super rich. He had businesses and all that. He later went on to politics, but I digress. About a year or so, I hear a story that some people are looking for him. At this point, let's call him Bob. He was caught assaulting some boys in the neighborhood. One of them had admitted to his parents after they suspected something. In my home country, the police work a bit differently due to the corruption. But somehow, Bob fled that part of the country. And that's the last I heard of him. Now fast forward. My immediate family and I moved to the diaspora, won't say where, and all of a sudden, things have changed in our favor. More opportunities and money is looking nice and all. I work hard, so you know. Early 2010s, I go to visit home after almost a decade. I got to my little hometown, and guess who shows up? By the way, when you go overseas and go back home, it's a big deal. You are a big fucking deal. Everyone thinks you will leave some euros or dollars, lol. This guy sees me, and he approaches me like nothing ever happened. I had forgotten all he did to me and my cousin till this very minute. Something in me snapped. I looked at him, and when he shook my hand, I swear I do not know how I never jumped on his neck to kill him. I called my cousin and reminded him of that. He really played it out and said he does not remember. I reminded him that we still have young children at home, and there is a predator who after all these years is still on the loose. I have a good job, and I actually make good money, so it's not an issue. I just told him we need to get him castrated. By the way, in my little town back home, that's what is done to R-wordists, but it kind of applies to men who R-word women. What he had done to us was unheard of, and to many, it does not exist. Most of the kids I went to school with are poor, unfortunately, and make less than £5 a day. So if you show them more than 1,000, they will be willing to do just about anything. One of them became what is equivalent to one of those traffic cops here. He has a weapon and authority, but rarely he uses that weapon. The police are some of the most corrupt people in Africa. I told him my story, and guess what? He was a victim too. I told him to detail whatever he had to, but make sure that man, now in his 40s, is literally fucked. I gave him $500 and promised another significant amount, which I'd bring myself. I went back to my country of adoption, and a few months later, my cousin sends me a video of what we call mob justice in my home country. The video shows a man being ruthlessly beaten by villagers with clubs, rocks, and such. The story goes that he had attempted to lure a local chief officer's kid and his friends to doing the nasty. Before they turned him in, they castrated the nasty man. A year or so, I visited back home, and my former classmates told me to buy him tea, lol. Trust me when I say I bought him a lot of tea. There was no evidence as the man was not caught in the act. He was charged with various other shit, but he got out because he is now insane. He is the town madman. It does not take away what he did to us, and the worst part is, I remember after what he did to me thinking that was normal. Last year I went home for Christmas and I saw him, stared in his eyes, and told him I paid people to do that to him. That's literally the best $1,000 I've ever paid. I have a family of my own now, and I have no regrets. This fool walks around with a gap between his thighs and eats from trash cans because of it. And Jesus, that was one hell of a confession. Obviously the English wasn't good, but like the OP said, it's his third language, give him a break. But wow, that is just an insane confession. I saw murder. I live in Australia, and there are some really beautiful hiking trails that I like to go on to not only see the views, but also get exercise, as I wasn't in the best shape back then. I was hiking near the Glasshouse Mountains near the edge of a trail, so there was trees on either side of me, with an opening allowing view down the side of the mountain. As I hiked up, I got near the top of a trail when I heard screaming like an argument. Lots of curses and just horrible things. As I got closer to the sound, I heard something along the lines of, "Help, please help," and sobbing with more curses. I thought someone may have fell, so I went to get a closer look, and I saw a person on top another person, and the one on top was swinging their arms up and down on this other person's chest. Then the guy on top just left, ran. I saw the person die. They were trying to crawl and died. And at this time, I didn't have a phone because I was still only young and had strict parents. I've been carrying this guilt for over 10 years, and I'm shaking while typing this. This isn't a joke. I saw a murder. I got S extortion in less than 10 minutes, but deserve it? And by S extortion, I mean SEX extortion. I'm sorry I have to censor, but you get the gist of the word. And then let's get into the email. Dear Snook, I'm a 21-year-old male living in the Southwest United States. I've recently come across your channel on Spotify, and I listen to your stories while at work. I work at an auto shop, and your content helps keep my mind occupied during the day. Please keep up the great work. When I heard you open up the opportunity to give your confessions, I figured I'll give it mine. It'd make for a good story in my opinion. I've been needing to get this confession off my chest for a while. I'm not really sure how to cope or what to do next. I never thought something like this would happen to me, but here I am. I'd also like your opinion at the end and the opinion of everyone listening. I've provided some questions. Firstly, I apologize in advance. My grammar and spelling aren't great. First time writing something like this. My girlfriend was away visiting her family in Arizona for the week. She hasn't seen them in a bit, and I had to work. I offered to stay home and watch our pet while she's out of town. I didn't have any big plans while she was gone. Maybe just do some study work once home and hang loose. The first day alone, I went to work and had a pretty rough day. Rude customers, got covered in oil, long hot day in general. Finally, it comes time for me to leave work and I'm overly tired, exhausted, and hungry. I was glad that I could just go home and relax without the worry of anything. Or so I thought. My drive home went smooth, almost felt like a dream. You know when you realize you're driving after driving through 6 lights and wondering if they're all green or not? Yeah, that's what happened with me, all of a sudden in the parking lot of our apartment. First thing I needed to do after driving at home is to take a shower. I very often come home smelling like cars and covered in a mix of sweat, oil, washer fluid, and other weird fluids, etc. Now this is the start for reasons I genuinely cannot explain, and have no excuse or explanation for doing. Upon taking my clothes off and going to use the restroom, I downloaded Grindr. I quickly signed up, made no profile bio, no profile photo, and no profile picture, and just browsed while I was on the toilet. Almost immediately, I was contacted by someone pretending to be a female on Grindr. One of the first things she asked for was a photo. I quickly snapped a selfie of myself undressed as I was about to hop into a shower, and then proceeded to close out of the app to find some music to play on Spotify before starting my shower. I scrolled for a bit and found a playlist. I connected my shower Bluetooth speaker and proceeded to put my phone down on my bathroom counter. As the song starts playing, I heard my phone vibrate. I looked and I received an Apple text message from a random email address starting with the letter G. The text included the photo I had sent, surrounded by a poorly photoshopped wanted poster and another poorly photoshopped image of my photo on what looked like a public sidewalk sign. With it was a message. The message demanded money, threatening to leak the photo to my friends and family if I didn't comply. And if I didn't, that they would not stop until they ruined my life. After realizing how poorly photoshopped these photos were and how the text was laid out, I figured I'm just gonna block them and all will be okay. I proceeded to immediately block the email. I deleted the text messages and deleted my account on Grindr. I thought to myself, I'm in the clear, and proceeded to take my shower. I couldn't be more wrong in my entire life. In the shower, I noticed my music stopped only for a brief few seconds, then turned back on with the speaker. Once I was done cleaning all the work grime off of me, I proceeded to hop out of the shower, and lo and behold, a missed call from my father. I figured maybe he's just calling to say hi. I proceeded to call my dad back. First thing he said to me is, "What the hell is this?" in a calm, collective, but upset toned voice. I immediately knew. Oh shit. Apparently, the person had got my phone number and looked at the people most related to me and put them all in a big group chat. My dad tried to tell me all of the people that were known contacts of his phone, and sure enough, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my sister, my stepmother, cousins, uncles, aunts, and several other phone numbers. He said, "Hey buddy, this is bad. This is going to put a stamp on this family for a while. I mean, holy shit, your mom, your grandparents? What are you going to say to them about this?" I basically said, "I'm not sure. I don't know what to do." Then my father said something that I will forever hear for the rest of my life. He said, "Son, what were you doing trying to meet up with a 16-year-old? I said, "What are you talking about?" And he then proceeded to describe that in the group chat was the photo of me with some text overlaid on it saying I was trying to meet a 16-year-old. I quickly realized how this was going to turn out. I couldn't see the group chat because I had blocked the original sender. Apparently, if you block someone that happens to be a part of a group, you can't see what they send, only what others send. More on this later. Regardless, since I blocked the person who sent the photo, I couldn't see it. I don't want to see exactly what it says. And I've still haven't seen to this day 6 months later. And I hope to not have to ever see it. I quickly tried to explain to my father what was happening, then hung up. A few minutes after getting off the phone with my dad, my sister called me wondering what the hell was going on, and provided that a majority of her side of the family was in that group chat and were the unknown numbers. Now I had a list of numbers texted out to myself so I could try to figure out who was going to see this and to contact before it was too late. Again, I couldn't see the group chat. I was exhausted, starving, and so shaken realizing what this could turn into. I then called my mom, my stepsister, and my grandfather, all while I was still drying off from my shower. This all took place within the span of 10 to 15 minutes. From when I first got the app to the last hang up for now. My girlfriend was out having dinner with her grandparents at this time, and I knew I had two choices. Try to hide this forever or come forward immediately. For genuinely no motive whatsoever, or no reason or desire to cheat or had any thoughts about questioning my identity, I decided to come forward to my girlfriend and tell her exactly what happened. She would be back from dinner in about an hour. That was probably the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in 1 hour. I was trying to ask myself, why did I do this? Trying to come up with an explanation. How do I explain this to my friends and family? Nobody believes me from what I've said so far. I'm so tired. I just want to go to bed. Why did I do this? Once she was back, I called her and explained everything the best I could. She was devastated, broke down crying, and told me she needed space to process everything while she finished visiting her family for the week. That week would turn out to be the worst week of my life. I tried to go to bed that night knowing I had messed up badly. I thought I had probably ruined my relationship. My entire family had now seen those photos of me, and I was being accused of being gay and trying to meet up with a young person, essentially being labeled a complete creep. My girlfriend was upset and confused, and I was confused myself. After one of the most stressful days of my life, the last thing I needed was this. Somehow, I did manage to fall asleep. The next morning, I woke up and opened my phone to the group chat. I learned that when you block someone in the group chat, you don't see their messages, but if someone else replies, you can only see their message. The group chat contained nearly my entire family, a few relatives, and a couple completely random numbers. One of the random numbers replied with a simple, "Huh?" or "What is this?" That's how I realized exactly who had received it. That was the only message ever sent. I immediately deleted the chat, reported the number to Apple, saved screenshots of what had been sent to me, and reported the incident online. I also filed a report through the FBI's online extortion reporting system and used the image removal resources provided. I still had to go to work that day. When I arrived, there was a police officer who regularly patrols the area. I explained the situation to him, and he suggested filing a police report. Once I got off of work, while I was at work despite everything, she still went to have lunch with my parents the day after the incident, which had already been planned for a few weeks. She went with almost every person that was on the list. She said lunch was good, but they didn't talk about the incident. I spent the day thinking it through at work, and ultimately I decided it likely wouldn't help much to report it to the police. The damage had already been done. All that was left was to recover. The following days were extremely difficult. My girlfriend didn't trust me. We hardly spoke other than the typical good morning and good night, and what are you doing today, calls and texts. She said she would like to talk to me when she gets back. The following days were filled with anxiety, stress, and disappointment towards myself. I kept calling more and more of the contacts of that group chat, called them and explained exactly what I've explained before. No idea why, no motive. For my family members who had to see that photo, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to see a photo of me in the first place. It is not a good way to be a role model in the family. And to my beautiful girlfriend, I'm sorry my actions have hurt you, and I know I'll never be able to forgive myself for what I did. My father continued to press me about it for a few weeks, bringing it up repeatedly, until eventually it faded into the background. While I waited for my girlfriend to get home, nothing new reappeared. My feelings started to get a little better. Most family members shrugged it off, but I knew my girlfriend would be the one that I owe it all to. She ended up driving home and got home before I got home from work. She had a couple hours to herself after I got home. I quickly took a shower, we ate dinner together, and had a nice conversation to end the evening. Of course, it was emotional. Of course, it is everything that you expected it to be, but I was surprised that she took it as well as she did. She acknowledged that it was a mistake and appreciated that I told her immediately. And now for my favorite part of your story, Snook, the update. I waited until the right time to even send you the story. That way, there is an update. This all happened before the holidays last year, and now it is January 2026. I am happy to report my girlfriend and I have actually grown closer than we ever have before. We actually were able to enjoy the holidays, spend time with our families. We've gone out to dinner multiple times, gone on plenty of dates, and we actually feel like I said before, closer than we ever have. It seems like my family has moved on. I haven't heard anything about it since then. I haven't received any new photos, any new text messages. However, my heart does give a beat when I get a text message from a G. I'm happy with the outcome. It's probably the best outcome I could have gotten. However, I will still have that gut feeling knowing that I did this to my family, to my girlfriend, and to me. And I will live with that for the rest of my life. Now I have a couple questions for you and for everybody watching at home. Firstly, could there have been an explanation, maybe a psychological reason for what I did if there was genuinely no motive? More context. Like I've mentioned many times before, I've never questioned my personal preference in gender. I've never once been interested in dating and another person. I've been in a happy relationship, and I've never thought I would even do something remotely close to this. Secondly, couldn't have been that. I was extremely lucky/unlucky. Was it a blessing in disguise? Could this have been something preventing me from doing anything further? And lastly, how am I able to regain the trust from my girlfriend? Like I said, we are doing much better than we ever have, but of course, it's not fully healed. What am I able to do? How should I move on with my life? How hard should I be on myself for it? How are we able to grow together closer than we ever have, even more? Thanks, Snook. And all right, I'll try to take a stab at these questions, but these questions are really a question for you, and you need to ask yourself. I can't read your mind. And these questions kind of expect me to read your mind. Your first question was, could there have been an explanation or a psychological reason for what I did? I mean, you said you like immediately regretted it, which I guess makes sense if you were feeling curious, but this is just a question for you, man. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, no one usually just downloads Grindr and sends a explicit photo of themselves randomly. Like, that's not something that happens a lot of the time unless you are wanting something out of that other person or wanting to, for some sort of desire or a thrill to cheat, because that is cheating. But you said there's no motive, which I can understand your dad not believing you. But yeah, that is just completely a question for yourself. Yeah, I don't know why, because in this question you say, I've never thought I would even do something remotely close to this. And so exactly, that's a question for you. I can't read your mind. I don't know your motivation, because did you just want a thrill? Were you curious or whatever? I don't know. I can't read your mind. And same with your second question. You said, secondly, couldn't have been that. I was extremely lucky/unlucky. Was it a blessing in disguise? Could this have been something preventing me from doing anything further? And I don't know. So what do you mean by could this have been something preventing me from? Could this have been something preventing me from doing something in the future or in the further? So did you think you were going to keep doing stuff? I don't know. I feel like you left out a lot of details when it came to downloading Grindr, taking the photo, and taking a shower. I feel like that was a clear gap of details that you left out, and we can't really get a good consensus on why you did what if you leave out those important details. I mean, what did this girl hit you up and you were like, hey, you're cute, whatever, and then you send the picture, or did you just send the picture right away? I don't know. I mean, I can only speculate because there's just a lot of details missing. And then your last question is, how am I able to regain the trust from my girlfriend? And that's a question for you. Again, I don't know your girlfriend. I don't know who she is. I don't know her personality. I don't know any of this. And so, yeah, dude, I don't know. I guess just be open, honest, and be understanding that she might not trust you for a long time because you admitted to cheating on her or being unfaithful. And so it'll make sense if she is very apprehensive to trust you or won't fully trust you with certain things or trust you around her family or whatever, because you might be a little bit, this is going to be very blunt and honest. You might be a little bit embarrassing for her in front of her family because of this whole incident. I mean, you might be able to move on easy peasy, but you also might not. I don't know. But these questions are really for you, and I don't really know how to answer these. But yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit. And all right, guys, that is the last confession we're getting into in today's video. And what did you think about today's confessions? I thought this was a unique concept. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good to get a mix and match of the Reddit confession threads and your guys' confession threads. It kind of keeps it fresh and is a different perspective each way. And also, I kind of did this because most of the time I don't have enough of viewer submitted confessions to make a long video. So it kind of lengthens the video and makes it more interesting. And yeah, if you are going to write me a confession, please make sure to use spacing, paragraphs, and just decent grammar so it's easier for me to read. And yeah, thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. If you enjoyed today's video, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below what you thought about today's video, and check out some other videos on the channel if you enjoyed this one. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Spotify, and thank you so much for watching. It means the world. And this was Snook, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're getting into some unsettling Reddit horror stories. And oh boy, these stories are some of the best Reddit stories I have ever read. So you're gonna want to make sure to stick around. They're horrifying, they're creepy, and like the title says, they are unsettling. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below and let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future. And all right, this video will be long enough already. So without further ado, let's get into some unsettling Reddit horror stories. Not A by Saturdead. I'm not a liar, not a conspiracy theorist, not a man known to exaggerate. No one's listening. I'm throwing this message in a bottle online, hoping someone relevant picks it up. If you know me, you know. You have my number, call me. Let me explain. I'll start from the beginning. I'm a South Dakota boy. Came from a small community near the bend of the river by Crow Creek. Us East River folk live by a different tempo. We don't get a lot of big headlines, and we keep our dreams close enough to see them from our bedroom window. I wanted to be a cop like my dad. I followed in his footsteps, got my badge, and now I'm a cop too. Before this whole shitstorm started, I've been doing this job for 4 years. I was no stranger to death or disease, but it's from places you expect. Some guy ODing outside a fast food joint, a diabetic running a stop sign into oncoming traffic. We see gruesome stuff. You can't avoid that. It comes with the job, but it was never intentional, you know? It was always a consequence of bad choices or random happenstance or plain bad luck. But one day, we got a call about something I'd been dreading. A driver called about spotting something off the road west of Wessington. We didn't get a lot of details, but me and my partner were the closest to check it out. Apparently, they'd found a head. A human head. Out there. It's all flat, no hills, just the occasional tree blocking the horizon. We could see this guy parked by the side of the road long before we got there. There was a couple of other people there. An old man with a bloodhound, 2 teenage boys taking pictures with their phones, and a man in overalls that reminded me of a walking blueberry with a sunflower patch on his chest. That was the driver, the guy who made the call. Russell and I parked and got out. Russell's my partner, had been for about 9 months at that point. We worked well together, but we had no contact outside of work. It was better that way. The few times we'd get personal, we figured out we were nothing alike. We had vastly different opinions and experiences. West of the river kind of folks, you know? We go up to this blueberry guy. He tilts his cap and points at the end of a fence with the butt of a cigarette. "Right there," he says. "Shit's right there." He was trying to play it off as something casual, but I could tell he was mortified. There were 3 cigarettes scattered around his feet, and at least 2 of them weren't even half finished. He was shaking bad enough to drop them. The old guy with the bloodhound had to hold his dog back. Not that I was angry or something, but it seemed desperate to sniff the thing. And from where I was standing, that's what it looked like. A thing. Not a head. Not a person. Just this pale blotch of skin lined up against a fence pole. "I was stopping to talk to Chris when I saw it," the driver continued. "That's Chris." The old man raised a hand and snapped at his dog, who finally calmed down. "I stepped back and called you guys. I barely looked. Not a peep." Russell asked the mandatory questions, establishing a time frame, asking about the witnesses, what he was doing, all that stuff. Meanwhile, I asked the teenagers to step back and explain to the old man that we had to keep the area clear. I was the first one to step up close and take a good look. Someone had to confirm that it was a human head. And it was. It was fresh. Young woman, maybe 20 to 25 years old. Mouth half open as if letting out a long sigh. Eyes closed. Without touching anything, I took some pictures. It's important to be able to show a crime scene the way you found it. You never know when the weather takes a turn. I made a couple observations. She didn't have any makeup on, and there was not a large pool of blood. The head was sort of propped up against the fence, making me think someone left it there intentionally. This was not an accident. No way. It dawned on me that I was witnessing that might be my first murder scene. Well, not a murder scene. A murder display, if anything. We called in the cavalry. As I mentioned, things like this don't happen where I grew up. Accidents, yes, but this was no accident. Couldn't be. We got a whole bunch of cars out there in less than an hour. We sectioned off a part of the farmlands to check for further body parts. We got the cadaver dogs, we called to prep for an autopsy, and we had crime scene investigators on site by late afternoon. I'd never seen that kind of mobilization. Now, I'm sure they wanted to bring in some expert from Sioux Falls, but time was a factor. We needed an early call on whether this death was the result of an accident, animal, or tool. Yes, it all pointed to a murder, but we couldn't know for sure. That wasn't our job. Before anything, we needed an initial statement. We had a coroner and a medical examiner ready. Problem was, these were local guys, and they weren't prepared. Not in the least. Me and Russell were sent along to get them up to speed as a sort of go-between. We were the first to get there, after all. We got the pictures and the initial statements. Also, we knew these people. That'd make things easier. Russell and I got there just before dinner time. The medical examiner had gotten there about 10 minutes ahead of us, but the coroner was already getting work done. The medical examiner was a lady named Corrine, early 40s, mother of 4, no-nonsense kind of woman with a bad but honest temper. The coroner's name was Daly. Man ought to have retired by then, but he was still going at it. Almost 7 years old, but as sharp as ever. When we stepped in, he was already turning the head over, making observations about the wound. "Daly," Russell said as we entered. "How you holding up?" "Just dandy," Daly said, making a note. "I'm more worried about our friend here." Corrine pushed us aside and made her way to the examiner's table. Russell got a pretty good shove and rolled his eyes at her. "Since you're still looking, I take it you haven't come to a conclusion." Corrine sighed. "What's the verdict?" It's easier to explain what it's not at this point," Daly said. "The wounds are about halfway patterned, halfway something else, but it depends on the time they were inflicted." "So what's the TOD? We talking days or weeks?" "I haven't got the slightest clue." That made her pause. There were several inconsistencies that Daly noted. For example, several of the usual markers that we see in corpses just weren't there. There were no flies or maggots, and many common shows of decomposition had either not manifested at all or manifested in an order that didn't make sense. For example, the inner lining of the mouth showed signs of advanced decay around the soft tissue, but there were no signs of bacteria or strong active smells. Daly couldn't make any sense of it. Russell and I stood back and watched them work. We knew Daly had a habit of not answering his emails or checking his phone, so it was better to have some boots on the ground to keep tabs on their progress. We were all going to be on call for most of the night anyway, so we figured we'd settle in for the long haul. I took a dinner break while Russell stayed behind. He'd brought leftovers that he forgot to eat for lunch. I got an hour to clear my head and fill my stomach while they kept working. I checked in with the guys still out in the field. They hadn't found anything else. No witnesses, no footprints, no track marks, no wheels, not a thing. They were checking traffic cameras going in and out of the area, but the distances required and the amount of cars passing through made the potential numbers go up in the hundreds. I could tell it was a dead end. Hell, I could tell that just by the tone of their voice. By the time I got back, Daly and Corrine were arguing. They were listing things on a whiteboard, going through them one by one and crossing things off. You could tell who'd written what. Daly had this old-fashioned cursive, while Corrine kept it simple and blocky. The smell of chemicals tickled the ranch-sprinkled taste buds on the back of my tongue, making me wish I was back outside. Russell gave me a pat on the shoulder and took a break, leaving me alone with the arguing professionals. Corrine was in the middle of a monologue, pointing at one thing at a time on the whiteboard. Not a hacksaw, not a chainsaw, not a, what do you say, piano wire? Not a piano wire, Daly agreed. Not a knife, not an axe. And we got nothing certain, Corrine continued. Not a fragment, no nothing. Daly turned to me. You got any ideas? You saw anything out there? Anything? Not a thing, I shrugged. Witness statement in the folder. This is shit, Corrine spat, flipping the folder over. Not a single thing we can use. You don't think it was wildlife? I asked. Wolves or bears? We have to find some kind of baseline before we start eliminating things it ain't, Corrine explained. We can't just start listing things it's not. Well, it's better than standing here saying nothing, Daly argued. Hold on. He flipped the whiteboard over, uncorked his pen, and started at the top. "It's not a wolf," he said. What else?" They went at it for hours. Not a wolf, not a bear, not a coyote, not a bobcat. Just a long list of things to exclude. They checked for fur, claw marks, teeth marks, anything. All the while, Russell and I went up and down the stairs, calling the chief to let him know there was nothing to report. By 8 p.m., we were running in circles. We called it a night. Kareen packed up first. Then Russell and I got off the clock. Russell headed home immediately, but I noticed Daly sticking around a little longer. I pretended to look for my keys as I kept an eye on him. He was still talking, but not to me. "We're missing something," he mumbled. "We're missing something big." "Like what?" I asked. He looked up at me, snapping out of whatever thought was running through his head. I'm just making conversation. Pay me no mind." "All right, you good to lock up?" Daly waved me off with a smile, and I didn't think much of it. The next morning, we got a call about feds wanting to join in on the action. I tried to get a hold of Daly, telling him to come in a little early, but the man really can't be reached by email or text. He was coming in whenever, and that was that. Kareen, on the other hand, was already there by the time Russell and I pulled into the parking lot. She was leaning against a streetlight, tapping a pen against a notebook. "Not a big machine," she mumbled. "Not a small machine. Not a tool. Not a saw." "Morning, Kareen," Russell yawned. "Trying to get some work done before the feds get here?" She ignored us. We'd gotten the spare keys to open. Daly got the other pair. Kareen wasn't usually the one we called for these kind of things. Then again, we'd never had this kind of thing. Not really. The moment Russell clicked the lock open, Kareen shoved her way past him, this time with even more force. It was enough to make Russell go, "Hey," but she had no visible reaction. She kept mulling over whatever list she'd made on her notebook. She was eager to get back to it. We only had about an hour or so before reinforcements would come knocking on the door. Kareen wasn't wasting any time. She ran down the stairs, put on the bare minimum equipment, and rushed to pull the slabs out. We barely had the time to keep up with her, like she was racing against the clock. But when she pulled the slab out, there was a whole other problem. The head was gone. Russell stood there, mouth agape. He snapped out of it the moment Kareen turned to us, her eyes sunken and red. Something was off. She'd always been a bit short and snippy with us, but this was something else. I don't think Russell saw it, but I could tell she was up to something. She looked from him to me and then at the door. "Not a little girl," she mumbled. "Not an old lady. Not a teenager." "You all right there?" Russell asked. You slept okay?" I could tell she wasn't listening. There was something about the white of her eye that bugged me. A sort of micro twitch, like a nervous dog. When she suddenly burst into a sprint. I was ready. Russell wasn't. I stepped in front of her, and she ran straight into me. She knocked herself to the ground, landing face first on the hard floor. I could hear the air pass from her lungs in a huff. I got a pretty nasty landing flat on my back, but nothing was broken. A bad bruise, but I got lucky. Russell was on her back within seconds, putting her in handcuffs. "Not a snake bite," Kareen mumbled. "Not a hound, not a house cat, not a gunshot." "What the hell?" Russell gasped. "What's wrong with you?" "Not a thing wrong, not a question answered, not a long way to go." "Kareen!" Russell yelled. "You hear me?" I was already calling for another squad car. Time was of the essence. We had a missing head, and Daly wasn't around. I prayed to God he'd just overslept, but I had this sinking feeling in my gut that he hadn't. There was something about the way he'd lingered the other night that made me think he might have done something he shouldn't. Another car was sent to check on Daly, but he wasn't at his apartment. Another car went to check his office, but there was no one there either. We ended up combing through whatever contacts we thought might be useful. Russell and I had our coffees, making mental lists out loud. "His ex-wife," I said. "I know he got one of those. I don't think he made it to Florida overnight. His car's still in the driveway." "So, not ex-wife," I said. "Not an ex-wife," Russell agreed. "Not a chance, not a..." I turned to look at him as he tapered off. He stared at the steering wheel, coffee hanging limp in his hand. His eyes glassed over, and I could see a bubble of spit pooling in the corner of his mouth. He wasn't blinking. Russell? He blinked, dropping his coffee straight into his lap. It wasn't that hot, but he was up and about within less than a second, cursing like a sailor. He kicked the cup down the street like it owed him money and got back in the car, wiping the seat in his pants with a blanket from the glove box. You okay? Not about to get sick, not now. You sure? You seem out of it. You really think Staley stole the damn head? Russell said, changing the subject. You think he'd do that? I mean, he could have. I mean, it's possible. What's the odds of him and them both disappearing without him being involved? Not a snowball's chance in hell. Exactly. Not a chance. I gave Russell another look. He was clearly thinking about something, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I tapped him on the shoulder and handed him my coffee. I think you need this more than I do. I'll take the wheel for a bit. We spent most of the early day driving around town, asking questions. We had a couple of vague leads, but it's like we were spinning tires, stuck in the mud. Russell was getting frustrated, so the chief asked us to do something else for a bit. They were busy dealing with the feds anyway, and they had 4 different squad cars out looking for Daly. We were sent to check on a roadside diner, old folks kind of place. It had been closed all day, and the waitress working the lunch shift was getting worried. The owner wasn't answering their phone, and there'd been no notice ahead of time. There was just a note in the window saying closed. It wasn't a high priority call, but it gave us something to do. That is, I noticed something curious. We went to check up on the place before we headed to the owner's registered address for a house call. But when I got a closer look at the sign, I noticed it was written in a beautiful cursive. I elbowed Russell and pointed. You see that? He nodded, moving in to get a closer look. Not a common thing around here, Russell said. Owner's got arthritis. You don't think he wrote that? No. He coughed. Now that I think about it, I think I've seen Daly around here before. You have? When? Not long. Russell trailed off, falling silently. I gave him a couple of seconds. This time, I wasn't going to snap him out of it. I wanted to see what was going on. He stood there for a full minute. I counted. It was a full minute. Then he almost toppled over, tipping forward like a falling tree. That's when I rushed to catch him. If I hadn't, he'd have gotten a face full of gravel. He immediately went on the defensive, straightening his back out. I'm okay, he insisted. I'm okay. You gotta talk to me. I'm okay, whatever. I'm okay, nada. Stop saying that. You keep saying that and you zone out. Saying what? I blinked. I didn't want to say it. There was something dangerous in it. Like turning a key to a door you didn't want to open. I shook it out of my head and headed for the car. Before I got halfway, Russell was going around the back. He wasn't about to wait. He was heading inside, with or without me. I had to stop whatever I was doing to catch up with him. I called out to him, but he was heading for the back door. Before I got to him, he'd cracked a window and shoved the door open. He was rushing inside with the same urgency that Corrine had, except I wasn't there to tackle him. Last thing I saw before he rounded the corner was him pulling out his gun. I called out for backup as I ran after him. I stopped dead in my tracks a couple steps inside the kitchen. The owner was on the floor, face down in a pool of blood. You could smell death on him. Russell had stepped over him, heading straight for the front of the diner. This wasn't like him. Russell was not a hothead, not a thrill seeker. If anything, he was the controlled one. Russell, I called out. Gotta step back. Backup's on the way. There was no answer. Instead, he rushed straight to the front and stopped. I followed him, rounding the corner. The blinders were shut, casting the whole serving area in a gray shade. A couple streaks of sunlight made their way through the shutters, lighting up the white spaces with spots of red. Daly had been busy. Without a whiteboard, he'd been writing on the furniture with whatever pen was closest. Turns out that pen was blood. The first few sentences seemed familiar. Not a cougar, not a lion, not a panther, not a gator. More animals, but the further in you got, the text got smaller, more concentrated, and the sentences grew stranger. Not a lot, not a little, not a lord, not a queen. Then, at the far end, there was something written on the table. Russell had already got there, picking something up from it. As I got closer, I saw the text, while trying to keep an eye on my partner. The text was cleaner, underlined. Not a person. Not a person. Russell nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. What's that you're holding? I asked. What are you doing? He dropped his handgun to the floor and cradled something between his hands. As I got closer, I saw what it was. The bottom jaw of the missing head, torn loose. Not a person, Russell repeated. Not a threat. You ought to put that down. We got people coming in any second. He looked up at me, elated, this immense sense of relief spreading over his face. It's not a person, he repeated. It's okay. Not a person. Not a corpse. What's not a corpse? He held up the jaw, looking me in the eye, and without looking away, he put it up to his lips and bit off a mouthful. It didn't make the sound I thought it would. Instead, there was a soft and mushy kind of noise, like someone biting a jelly-filled marshmallow. He barely chewed it for a second before he got another chunk. She? He said, mouthful. It's fine, not a person. I kept shaking my head, backing away. I didn't even notice I'd pulled my gun. He held the flesh out to me, looking like I'd say something hurtful. Try it, he smiled. Try a little. No way, I said. Nada. I had to stop myself. I had to physically stop myself. Thinking about this sentence made my head spiral into a pattern of repetition over and over again, like an allergic reaction in the back of my mind. I slapped my hands over my mouth, smacking my front teeth with the metal of my gun. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't shoot Russell, but I couldn't stay, and I turned away. I hadn't noticed the bathroom door opening, the one in the back, near the grill, and I hadn't noticed Daly waddling out of it. Turns out, he'd had a meal of his own. He'd eaten most of its head. Hair was still hanging out the side of his mouth. His glasses were clinging to the tip of his nose, a single good shake from falling to the floor. In the dark, his hands looked black rather than bloody, but you could tell from the smell. I ran straight into him, almost knocking him over. He fumbled his steps a little, leaned back against the rail, and braced himself. It's okay, Daly burped. It's not a person. Not a corpse, Russell added. Not a soul. I could hear myself finishing the sentence. I was just a syllable or two away. I wanted to say it was not a person too. Not a problem. Not a. Instead, I pushed past Daly. I rushed forward, leaping over the dead body, and threw myself out the back door. I got a good 10-15 feet out past the door before I looked back. Daly and Russell were both standing by my door, looking at me. They weren't chasing me off or trying to talk me down. They just stood there, mumbling the same pattern, the same rhythm. They couldn't figure out what the hell this thing was, so they were just listing things it wasn't. Not of this, not of that. Then I heard something, a dragging sound, and I realized they weren't looking at me. They were looking at something behind me. Something cold and mucus covered wrapped around my eyes like wet seaweed. I screamed, but that only served to open my mouth. Something cold got pushed in past my tongue, tickling my tonsils, and I swallowed. I choked as something bitter and meaty swirled down my gullet. It felt like someone had thrown a sack of bricks off a tall bridge, landing hard in the bottom of my stomach. I fell forward, gasping for air and scraping my knees. I was dry heaving to get that thing out of me. My eyes were covered in grease, and all I see is this figure. It emerged from behind me, moving past me. I barely saw the shape of it, but it had something like a big arm coming out of its side. It looked like a big corn cob, but instead of kernels, there were pieces. There was the shape of a foot, a hand, long hair from a scalp as it moved past me. Daly and Russell silently joined in. Before they disappeared down the northern field, I heard something snap and tumble to the ground. I got to my feet stumbling. I made it to the bathroom. I shoved fingers down my throat, but no matter what I did, nothing came of it. Something was stuck in the pit of my stomach, and by the time backup arrived, I was sobbing on my knees, bent over a bloody toilet seat. I was screaming into the porcelain, begging for whatever was inside of me to leave, but it didn't. They had to drag me up by my arms. It didn't get any of it out. Not a piece. Not a little piece. Not a single little piece. They didn't find Daly or Russell. I ended up with a 2-night stay at the hospital. Apparently, something similar happened to Corrine. She'd had a breakdown, and they were still trying to figure out the problem. Some signs pointed to a fungal infection, but they couldn't find the cause. The doctor determined that it was not a virus, not a bacterial infection, not a misfolded prion. They had to put her on an IV, and they couldn't get her to shut her mouth long enough to eat. They were still trying to figure me out when I got sent home. They said I wasn't as far gone. Paid leave. 3 weeks. 3 weeks turned to 6 as the test results came back inconclusive over and over again. At one point, they thought I had some kind of contagion, but they couldn't say for sure. Someone mentioned narcotics, but it just turned into a long list of negative tests. I switched doctors 3 times as they kept tripping over their own diagnoses. One of them ended up taking their own sick leave after a while. I've been trying to figure out a way to get rid of this. I sit up at night, staring at the wall, drawing on my cheap wallpaper with a black pen. I want to help them. I want to figure this out. I write what I know to be true, over and over. It's not a threat, not a person, not a human, not a corpse. I had to give myself a reason to write again. I've been trying to resist it for so long. It's like whistling a song that you know you can't stop humming. If you start, it'll be on your mind all day. But I'll just do it. I'll do it until I get it out of my system. I don't care if it takes days, or weeks, or months. I'll figure it out. I'll get it out. And once it's gone, I'll be back here to figure this out. Not a day, not a week, not a month, not a year, not a threat, not a person, not a killer, not a beast, not a thing, not a. My father spent 30 years running from a small town church. I just found out why. Written by Something Goes Here, too. My father was a hard-working man. He worked 10 or 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. We barely talked. Some days I'd find him passed out on the living room couch or at the kitchen table with a beer. Eyes on the newspaper, but not really seeing it. His eyes would be sad and distant, face flushed. A couple beers in, he'd get like this. He wasn't drunk, just tipsy. I wasn't neglected, not by any means, but I was never front and center in his mind. Or at least, that's what it felt like. That's just the kind of dad he was. But then he died. We buried him the summer I turned 16. He fell asleep at the wheel and went into a ditch on his drive home from work. Mom was, of course, devastated. He had a whole storage unit of bits and pieces of his life, a storage unit that we couldn't afford anymore. Mom drove me out there one afternoon, a few weeks after the funeral. The stuff she wanted to save went into the trunk, boxes and boxes of stuff. We went through everything. The air was thick with dust mites. He painted in college. My father, who would sit with a 1,000-yard stare at the dinner table after a brutal day at work, had been a pretty good artist back then. There were a couple of landscapes, a few portraits of people I didn't recognize, but that my mom said were distant relatives, and half a dozen paintings of the same building. A little black church. It was squat, square, and plain, an unassuming building, the kind of tiny county church that could fit no more than a couple of dozen people. I knew my father was from the boonies, way out in the country. "Mom, where is this church?" I asked, tilting the painting up. She glanced over and squinted at the painting. "That's from when your dad was a kid. A church near where he grew up." "He went there?" "I guess so. He painted it enough." She turned back to the box she was sorting through. "Your father didn't really talk about his childhood. I met him at college. He'd already left all that behind by then. He wasn't close to his family." I stared at the building. Just a small, dark building in the middle of nowhere. We went to my mom's folks every year. I'd never met my dad's family. They had barely showed up at his funeral. "That's what makes all these paintings so strange." She paused, wiping the sweat from her forehead. "He must have done them early in college before we met. After that, he never painted churches again. Just landscapes. Pretty sunsets, normal stuff." You ever ask him about it?" "A few times." She stood there quietly, staring at nothing. "He just changed the subject. He was good at that. He was excellent at that. I couldn't throw them away. Someday they'd end up in someone else's trash pile. Forgotten. But not yet. I hung them up in my bedroom. All 6 paintings, arranged on the wall above my desk, where I'd seen them while doing homework. Mom came in one night, stood in the doorway, looking at them. She didn't say anything for a long time. You really want those up?" she finally asked. "Yeah." She nodded and left. We didn't talk about them again. 2 years passed. The paintings stayed on my wall. I graduated, applied to colleges, got accepted. Mom wrapped each one in newspaper when I packed. Everything I owned went into the back of the car. She drove me 3 hours north and helped me carry the boxes up 4 flights of stairs to my dorm room. Mom hugged me at the door. "Call me on Sundays." "I will." She looked at me for a second, then left. I unpacked the paintings last, hung them on the wall above my desk in 2 rows of 3. I called my mom most Sundays. "How's school?" she asked one Sunday in my junior year. "Good. I'm graduating in May. Your father would be proud." She always said that. I never knew if it was true. "Hey, something weird happened last week," she said. "Some of your dad's family showed up at the house." "What? Who?" "I don't know. A man and a woman. They said they were his cousins. Wanted to go through his things. See if there was anything they could have after all these years." "What did he tell them?" "I told him to leave. It felt wrong, Charlie. They weren't at his funeral. They never called, never sent a card. Now they want his stuff." I stared at the paintings on my wall. Did they say what they were looking for? No, just that they wanted something to remember him by. She paused. "They asked about you too. Where you were going to school, what you were studying. I didn't like it." "You didn't tell them anything, right?" "Of course not. I'm not stupid," she sighed. "It just bothered me. Why now? What changed?" I didn't have any answer for her. I packed up my dorm room in May. Everything fit in the back of a borrowed pickup truck. The paintings came down last. I wrapped each one in newspaper, careful with the frames. I was carrying the last one down the stairs when my phone rang. I shifted the painting to one hand and dug my phone out with the other. My foot caught the edge of a step. The painting hit the landing before I did. The frame splintered. Shit. I crouched down and picked through the pieces. The canvas was fine, just some scratches. I pulled it free from the broken frame and something fell out. A small piece of paper, yellowed and folded. It had been tucked behind the canvas, invisible until now. I unfolded it. My father's handwriting. And the note reads as follows. "Honey, my death likely brought this letter to your hands. I should have burned these paintings years ago. My hands shook every time I reached for the lighter. These canvases are proof of my past. I kept them to remind myself why I had to leave that place. I ran from the church because the alternative was losing my soul. Their beliefs and their actions were rot. I refuse to raise a family in that shadow. I refuse to let their influence touch our lives. If they ever come looking for you, you must run. Do not seek answers. Do not try to understand the nature of their hunger. Just go. Your safety and Charlie's life are the only things that matter now. My phone was still on the ground where I dropped it. I picked it up and called my mom back. "Mom," I said, tell me about Dad's family again. The ones who came to the house? What? Why? Just tell me. They were strange. The women did most of the talking. She had this accent, a really thick southern one. She kept smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. The man just stood there and stared at me. What did they look like? Old, 50, 60 maybe. Dressed like they were going to church. Very modest, very religious looking, I guess. I looked down at the letter in my hand. "Charlie, what's going on?" "I don't know yet," I said, "but I'm going to find out." I found a forum where people researched obscure religious movements. I posted a picture of one of the paintings and said I was looking for information about my father's childhood. 3 days later, someone sent me an image. No message, just an attachment. A photograph of a handwritten list. Names in 2 columns, maybe 30 or 40 total. Some had lines drawn through them. My father's name was third from the top, crossed off. I searched the marked out names, found 17 matches. All of them had been born in the same cluster of small towns. All of them had left and started new lives somewhere else. Then they vanished or died under suspicious circumstances. Sometimes 20 years after they'd gone, sometimes 30. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. Maybe it hadn't been an accident. A letter arrived 2 weeks later. My name and my apartment address written in neat, careful script. The postmark was from a town I didn't recognize, somewhere in the South. I opened it, standing in my kitchen. "Dear Charlie, your mother probably mentioned we stopped by to see her recently. We should have reached out sooner. We know it's been years since your father passed, and we're sorry we weren't there for you both during that time. We've been thinking about your dad a lot lately. He was family, even if you didn't always see eye to eye when he was younger. We'd love to share some stories about him with you, if you're interested. We have some old photographs we thought you might like to see. We'll be passing through your area next month for a church retreat. If you'd like to meet for dinner, we'd enjoy getting to know you. No pressure at all. We understand if the timing doesn't work. God bless. Thomas and Sarah." And there was a phone number at the bottom. I didn't call the number. I sat on my apartment floor with the letter in my hands. They knew where I lived. They knew where my mother lived, and they had a list with my father's name crossed off. I packed a bag. I told my mom I was taking a road trip, seeing the country before job hunting started. She thought it was a good idea. Said I'd earned a break. I didn't tell her where I was going. Didn't tell her about the letter, or the list, or why I was really leaving. The drive took 2 days. I could have done it in one if I'd pushed, but I didn't want to drive exhausted. The landscape changed as I drove south. Flat farmland gave way to rolling hills, then thick forests that pressed close to the highway. Small towns appeared and disappeared, each one looking more tired than the last. I stopped for the night at a motel off the interstate. Sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, I drove the last 100 miles. State highways, then country roads, then roads that barely had names. The trees got thicker, houses became sparse, set back from the road behind long gravel driveways. I passed a hand-painted sign, "Welcome to God's country." 20 minutes later, I found the town. A gas station, a post office, a Dollar General, and a diner that looked like it had been there since the 1950s. Everything else was houses and churches. Lots of churches. I drove through slowly. People on the sidewalk stopped and watched my car pass. Strangers probably didn't come through here often. The motel was on the edge of town. A single-story, L-shaped building with maybe a dozen rooms. The sign out front said Travelot Motel, but the paint was peeling and half the letters were burned out. I sat in the car for a minute. If these people were as connected as I thought, they'd hear about a stranger in town. Probably already had. I'd register under my mother's maiden name. Pay cash. No paper trail. I checked in, then took the key and went to find my room. Thin carpet, floral bedspread that didn't match the curtains, a TV bolted to the dresser. The bathroom was small but clean. I dropped my bag on the bed and sat down. I was here. Now what? I decided to get food first, figure things out on a full stomach. The diner was easy to find, right on the main road. Half a dozen pickup trucks in the parking lot. I went inside. The conversations dropped when I walked in. People looked up, then went back to their meals. I sat at the counter. A waitress came over, an older woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun. Her name tag said Linda. "What can I get you, honey?" "Coffee and a burger, whatever's good." "Everything's good here," she smiled. "You just getting into town?" "Yeah, staying at the motel for a few days." "Visiting family?" "Something like that," I said. She nodded and went back to put my order in. I sipped my coffee and looked around. The walls were covered in old photographs, the town in different eras. My burger came. I ate it slowly, listening to the surrounding conversations. Mostly talk about work, weather, whose kid was doing what, normal small town stuff. But there was an undercurrent I couldn't quite place. The way people's eyes would flicker toward me, then away. The way conversation seemed to pause when I shifted in my seat. I paid my bill in cash and left. Drove around for a while, getting my bearings. Eventually, found the church, about 3 miles outside town, set back from the road behind a chain link fence, just like in my father's paintings. Small, square, black painted wood. A gravel parking lot with weeds growing through the cracks. A hand-painted sign read Church of the Narrow Gate. Service on 10 and 6. I didn't stop. Just drove past. Slow enough to take it all in, and I headed back to the motel. I woke up before the alarm, showered in the tiny bathroom, and put on the closest thing I had to church clothes. Dark jeans, button-down shirt. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like my father. Same jaw, same eyes, same way of standing with my shoulders slightly hunched. If anyone there remembered him, they'd recognize me. If someone did recognize my face, I could claim distant relation. Say I was looking into family history. Give myself room to back out if things felt wrong. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. I drove to the church at 9:30. Service started at 10. The parking lot had maybe a dozen cars in it. All older models, all clean despite the dirt roads. I parked at the edge and sat there for a minute. Hands on the wheel. This was stupid. I should turn around, drive home, forget about all of it. The front door was propped open. I could hear singing inside. Voices raised in a hymn I didn't recognize. I walked up the 3 concrete steps and went in. The interior was plain. Wooden pews, maybe 15 rows, a simple pulpit at the front. No stained glass, no decorations except for a large wooden cross on the wall behind the pulpit. Maybe 20 people scattered through the pews, families mostly, a few older couples. Everyone dressed modestly. I was underdressed. A few heads turned as I walked in. An older man near the back gestured to the empty space beside him. I nodded and sat down. The singing continued. I didn't know the words, so I just stood there while everyone around me sang. The hymn ended and everyone took a seat. A man at the front, middle-aged with thinning hair and a kind face, stepped up to the pulpit. "Let us pray." Everyone bowed their heads. I did the same. The prayer was long. Standard stuff about grace and mercy and walking in the light. Nothing that raised any red flags. When it ended, the preacher launched into a sermon about the book of Revelation, the end times, the tribulation, how the faithful would be saved and the wicked would face judgment. Halfway through, people started speaking in tongues. Just a few at first, scattered through the congregation, nonsense syllables that rose and fell in rhythm with the preacher's words. Then more joined in. Within a minute, maybe half the room was doing it. I'd seen speaking in tongues before. It usually lasted a minute or two. Then people would quiet down. This didn't stop. It built, got louder. The voices started to synchronize, falling into the same rhythm and the same cadence. It stopped sounding like random utterances and started sounding like a chant. The preacher kept talking, his voice rising to be heard above the congregation. But he wasn't trying to quiet them. He was encouraging it. His words shifted. His English dissolved into a guttural thrum. He wailed in a dialect of alien consonants and sibilant hisses. The sound dropped into a register that felt like a physical weight pressing against my ribcage. This was a predatory cadence. It echoed the damp, dark earth hidden beneath the floorboards. The air in the church felt thick. My head started to ache, a dull pressure behind my eyes. The woman in front of me was shaking, her hands raised, her head thrown back, her posture stiffened, her spine locking up against the wood. A sequence of rapid, glottal clicks began to pour from her throat. These were sharp, almost precursive sounds. They were the noise of dry husks grinding together in a wind, or pebbles sliding down a mountain. The rest of the congregation joined in a unified, dissonant wall of sound. Their voices had a low, vibrating frequency that rattled the marrow in my bones. I wanted to leave, but getting up and walking out would draw attention, so I stayed in my seat and tried to breathe through it. The chanting reached a peak, then suddenly stopped. Complete silence. The preacher lowered his head, placed both hands on the pulpit. When he looked up, he was smiling. "The Spirit is with us today, brothers and sisters. Let us give thanks." Everyone murmured in agreement. The woman in front of me bowed her head, calm now. The preacher stepped down from the pulpit. The service seemed to be ending. People started to talk quietly among themselves. Behind the pulpit, a door at the back of the church opened. A man stepped through. He wore a white suit, immaculate, spotless. He also wore a pale mask that covered his entire face. No features, just plain white with 2 holes for eyes. The congregation went quiet again. The silence changed into something reverent, expectant. The man in the mask walked slowly to the pulpit. His gaze swept across the pews row by row. When his eyes passed over me, I felt a weight, like something pressing against my skull. "Brothers and sisters," he said. His voice was deep, southern accent thick and smooth. "We gather here in the shadow of the Almighty. We stand at the edge of eternity. The great work continues, and we are blessed to be a part of it." He raised one hand. "Let us give thanks for what has been provided. Let us prepare for what is to come." The congregation responded in unison. It wasn't exactly words, more like a low hum that vibrated through the building. I felt it in my chest, in my teeth. The man in the mask began to speak. It wasn't English or tongues, something stranger. The sounds were incomprehensible, syllables that didn't fit together, rhymes that made my head pound harder. Images flashed in my mind. A pale mass shifted in the darkness. This shape was vast and wet and ancient. I felt a heavy undulation in the deep. A slick muscle began rising toward the surface of my thoughts. This presence radiated a cold, absolute hunger. I closed my eyes, tried to block it out, but closing my eyes only made it worse. The vision was clearer in the dark. The chanting ended abruptly, and I opened my eyes. The man in the mask was looking directly at me. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then he lowered his hand and stepped back from the pulpit. He turned and walked through the door behind him. It closed with a soft click. The congregation started moving again. People stood, gathered their things, headed for the exits, like nothing unusual had happened. The man beside me stood and offered his hand. "Welcome, I don't think we've met." I shook his hand. "Charlie, just visiting." He nodded slowly. "You look familiar. You got family around here?" "Distant relatives, I think. I'm trying to track down some family history. Thought I'd start by visiting local churches." "Well, you came to the right place. Lots of old families around here." He smiled. I'm Tom. You should come back for evening service, 6 o'clock, more informal. Good chance to meet people. Ask about your folks. I'll think about it. You do that. Tom patted my shoulder and walked away. I stood there for another minute, waiting for my head to clear. The pressure was fading, but slowly. The vision was reluctant to let go. I walked out into the parking lot, and the sun felt like it was too bright. I squinted against it and got into my car, hands shaking. I gripped the steering wheel until they steadied. I'd seen something, or felt something. I didn't know which, but it had been real. There was something in that church, something that responded when they called to it, and they all acted like it was normal. I drove back to the motel and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. Evening service was at 6. I had a few hours. I wasn't going back for evening service. I'd seen enough. Now I needed to see what they didn't want visitors to see. I needed to come back at night. I spent the afternoon at the diner. Coffee and pie I didn't touch. Linda refilled my cup. A few locals nodded at me. They'd probably seen me at the morning service. By the time I got back to the motel, it was almost dark. I sat in my room and waited. Watched the clock tick past 6, past 7, past 8. Evening service would be over by now. I changed into dark clothes, jeans, black t-shirt, hoodie, put my phone in my pocket, made sure it was on silent. The drive to the church only took 10 minutes. I killed my headlights a quarter-mile out and coasted the rest of the way, parking on the shoulder behind a stand of trees. The church sat dark against the night sky. No cars in the parking lot, no lights in the windows. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing moved. I circled around the building. The back had a small window, the kind that tilted out for ventilation. It was latched, but the latch looked old. I found a rock in the gravel and used it to tap at the frame until the wood splintered enough for me to work the latch free. The window swung open. I pulled myself up and through, landing hard on the floor inside. I was in a storage room. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with hymnals and boxes of candles. A door on the far side led into the main sanctuary. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The sanctuary looked different at night. The cross on the wall behind the pulpit seemed larger somehow. I walked down the center aisle. The door behind the pulpit, that's where the man in the mask had come from. I walked up the steps to the platform and tried the handle. Unlocked. Behind it, a dim hallway. My phone's flashlight seemed muted, as though the darkness was pressing back against it. I could see another door at the far end, but nothing else. The hallway smelled like damp earth. The door at the end was unlocked as well, and opened to a stairwell. Concrete steps leading down into the darkness. The smell was stronger there. I covered my nose with my sleeve and started down. The stairs went deeper than they should have. One flight, then another, then another. The temperature dropped. The walls changed from concrete to rough stone. Water seeped through the cracks, making everything slick. At the bottom, a tunnel, carved through the rock, shored up in places with old timber beams, looking like an old-time gold mine. Electric lights hung from the ceiling every 20 feet or so, bare bulbs that cast weak yellow lights. Someone had been down here recently. The lights were on. The tunnel opened into a chamber. It was large, maybe the size of a gymnasium. The ceiling was high and disappeared into shadow. The floor sloped gently down toward the center, where the room opened into a vast pit. Around the pit, symbols had been carved into the stone, geometric patterns I couldn't quite understand. My eyes kept sliding off them. And at the edge of the pit, there were people. I quickly ducked behind a support timber. I counted maybe a dozen figures in white robes, standing in a circle at the edge. They were chanting, the same inhuman noise I'd heard during the service. It resonated through the chamber, through my bones. In the center of the circle stood the man in the white suit and the pale mask. Kneeling in front of him, hands bound, was a young woman in white shorts and a t-shirt. She was blindfolded. She was crying, trying to pull away from the hands holding her, but the people in robes didn't let go. The man in the mask raised his arms. The chanting grew louder. Something in the pit answered, rising slowly. a pale shape in the darkness, glistening, wet. My eyes tried to follow the edges of it, find where one part ended and another began, but the edges kept moving, reorganizing, a surface that might have been skin split open and folded back on itself. Something that looked like a milky and unfocused eye rolled to the surface before sinking back down into the mass. A cluster of what might have been tentacles emerging from a different section, flexing and curling before they were absorbed back into the hole. It was massive. What I could see peeking over the edge was just a fraction of it. The rest extended down into the pit, into depths I couldn't understand. Pain spiked behind my eyes. I pressed my palms against my temples. The pressure didn't help. My vision blurred at the edges. I blinked hard. The thing was still there, still rising. My teeth ached. My jaw was clenched so tight I thought something might crack. I tried to relax the muscles, but couldn't. A high-pitched ringing started in my ears. Under it, a sound like static, or wet things moving against each other. I started shaking. I felt like I was outside my body looking in. They pulled the blindfold off the woman. She saw the abomination and began screaming, snapping me back to awareness. The robed figures lifted her and carried her to the edge of the pit. She fought, but there were too many of them. They held her over the edge, suspended above the thing below, then they threw her down. The thing began to descend back into the pit, taking her with it. Her screams faded as it pulled her down into the darkness, down until I couldn't hear her screams anymore. The robed figures lowered their heads. The man in the mask stepped back from the edge, and every head turned towards me. I must have made a sound. Or maybe they'd known I was there the whole time. The robed figures moved calmly and deliberately towards me. I staggered backward, away from the outcropping. My legs felt like they weren't working right. I tried to run, but my body wasn't responding. Static ran through my nerves. I made a few steps before my legs gave out. Hands grabbed me, pulled me upright. I didn't fight. What was the point? They dragged me back towards the pit. I thought they were going to throw me in, feed me to that thing waiting below, but they didn't. They pulled me past the pit, toward another tunnel I hadn't noticed, deeper into the earth. The man in the mask walked alongside. He didn't say anything, just watched as they carried me away. The last thing I remember before the darkness took me was a white rag, reeking faintly of something chemical, covering my mouth. Then nothing. Whatever they had used to drug me was wearing off, but my mind still felt thick. My awareness slowly floated up out of the pit of black velvet it had been stewing in. I was hanging by my arms from overhead. I looked up. Thick chains bound my wrists and dug into my skin. A gag filled my mouth that tasted faintly of rubber. I tried to swallow but couldn't. A single naked light bulb hung above me, casting deep shadows around the rest of the room. I had completely fucked up. I knew what rooms like this were used for. I knew what was coming. The metal door creaked open, and the male with the pale mask and the crisp white suit from the ceremony walked in. He cocked his head to the side and smiled a joyless smile.
"I'm gonna break you, boy, and there's nothing you can do about it."
It almost sounded ridiculous in his deep southern accent, like I was being threatened by Colonel Sanders, but there was absolutely nothing funny about the quiet malice in his voice. He circled around me, dragging something long and thin that I couldn't quite make out across the bare floor. The anticipation made my guts feel cold and twisted. I heard the first strike whip through the air before it landed. Across my shoulders, a line of burning pain. I jerked and twisted against the chains as my back exploded into fire. A cane, a bamboo cane. Shit. You came here thinking you'd be the one, didn't you? He kept circling. The one to expose us. The one to save everyone. His voice seemed to jump around, sometimes close to my ear, sometimes behind me. Another strike, lower this time. I strained against the chains biting into my flesh. Yo, what? 21? 22? You've been alive long enough that you think you understand how the world works. You have no fucking clue. 3 vicious strikes, one right after the other. My screams were muffled by the thick gag. I tried to focus, but between the pain and the drugs, my mind felt soft. You were careful. Or at least you thought you were. Thought you'd be covered your tracks. His voice stayed level, almost bored. You thought you were smarter than the people who've been doing this for 30 fucking years. He stopped, and I heard him take a deep breath. The arrogance of youth. You can't help it. The end of the cane tapped against my skull. Once, Twice. You still think you're special. Nobody's coming for you, and nobody knows where you are. He was in front of me now, crouching down. Through the pain and the tears, the mask was just a blur of white. And in a week, nobody will remember. They should be looking. He stood, started circling again. You'll understand eventually, if there's enough of you left to understand anything. Time stopped meaning much after a while. They took my clothes and gave me an oversized pair of joggers and a t-shirt to wear. They'd moved me from the room with the chains to a cell. Brick walls, no windows, a metal door with a slot for food. Then back to the room with the chains. The cult leader would come. The cane would come out. I'd scream until my voice gave out. Then scream some more. Sometimes it was the cult leader. Sometimes it was others. Men in robes who didn't speak, just did what they were told. They gave me water and enough food to keep me alive, but that was it. The horror wasn't in the pain, but in the mechanical, tireless way they went about their work. They moved with the efficiency of a machine designed to harvest rather than to punish. I lost track of how many times they dragged me back to that room. The days bled together, but I'm sure it had been at least a week or more. One night, or maybe it was day, the lock clicked quietly. I braced myself for what was to come, but instead, the door eased open a few inches and I caught a flash of a light blue eye and a face that looked familiar. Then footsteps faded down the corridor. I stared at it a while. This had to be a trick. A test. They were watching to see if I'd try to run so they could punish me worse. But I was already broken. What more could they do? I pulled myself to my feet using the wall. Every movement set fire through my back. I stepped into the hallway. The tunnel branched. I took the path that sloped upward. Figured up was good. Up meant service. Up meant out. I heard two voices ahead. One of them was the cult leader. I'd know that smooth southern drawl anywhere. The other voice was unfamiliar. Pleading. I followed the sound. The tunnel opened into the chamber with the pit. The same place I'd watched them feed the woman to that thing. Only two people this time. Just the man in the white suit standing by the edge of the pit, and another man on his knees in front of him. The kneeling man was older, maybe 50, with my father's eyes. My father's face. I knew it without being told. This was the person who'd sent me the list. This was family. The cult leader had a gun. He was talking, his voice calm and measured, explaining something to the man on the ground. I couldn't make out the words. Then he raised the gun and fired. The sound echoed through the chamber. My distant relative fell forward, clutching his chest. I ran at him, my legs barely working. I stumbled once, caught myself, kept going. The cult leader heard me at the last second and started to turn. I tackled him with all the strength I could manage. My shoulder drove into his ribs and he went over the edge. For a split second, I thought I was going down with him. My momentum carried me forward, my feet skittling on the damp cavern floor. Then I caught my balance before I went off too. He fell, the pale mask coming loose and drifting away from his face. Just an old man. White hair, deep wrinkles, eyes wide with terror. His white suit bright against the darkness below. He didn't scream, or if he did, I couldn't hear it over the sound of the cycloplane shifting of weight within the gloom. A rhythmic, wet grinding of cartilage and bone rising to meet him. I staggered over to the man laying on the ground. He looked so much like my father, it hurt. He was still breathing, shallow and wet-sounding breaths. Blood spread across his shirt. Go, he whispered. His eyes found mine. Same shape as my father's, but lighter. Go now. I can't leave you. You have to. He coughed. More blood at the corner of his mouth. Tell people. Tell them what happens here. Sounds rose from the pit, screams and wet, ripping noises, then nothing. He fumbled at his pocket, pulling out keys and pressed them into my palm. My car, blue Ford, parking lot, clothes, wallet, phone, everything you came here with is in the trunk. Come with me. Can't. His breathing was getting worse. I'm sorry about your father, about all of it. I should have done this years ago. What's your name? He smiled, blood staining his teeth. Daniel, I'm Charlie. I know. His eyes started to close. Run, Charlie. I ran back through the tunnels, up the stairs. I burst through the door behind the pulpit, into the church sanctuary. Early morning light came through the windows. The front doors were locked from the inside. I flipped the bolt and ran outside. The parking lot was empty except for a few cars. A blue Ford, 20 years old, rusted around the edges. I got my stuff out of the trunk and started driving. I didn't know where I was going at first, just away. But after an hour, I realized I was heading north, toward home, toward my mother. I needed to warn her. I had to tell her everything. But more importantly, to make sure she was safe. I drove for hours. I stopped once at a gas station and used the bathroom to wash the worst of the blood off. The clerk stared at me but didn't say anything. Once I was back on the road, I tried to call my mother 3 times. No answer. She was fine. She had to be fine. I crossed the state line. 2 more hours to go home. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Charlie? A man's voice. Official sounding. My stomach dropped. Yes? This is Detective Garrett with the County Sheriff's Department. I'm calling about your mother, Sandra. There's been a incident at her residence. We need you to come. What happened? Sir, I think it's better if we discuss this in person. Are you in the area? What happened to my mother? Silence on the other end. Then there was a fire. I'm very sorry. The rest of the conversation was white noise. I don't remember what he said or what I said back. I remember pulling over to the side of the highway, sitting there with my hands on the wheel, staring at nothing. Then I was driving again. I pulled onto my mother's street just after 9. The house was dark. The roof was gone. The walls were blackened shells. Yellow crime scene tape stretched across the front yard. A single patrol car sat at the curb, but no fire trucks. No ambulances. They had already taken her away. I parked and got out. Walked toward the house like I was in a dream. The patrol officer got out of his car when he saw me approaching the tape. Sir, this is an active investigation. That's my house, I said. My mother. Hold on. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Spoke quietly for a minute, then hung up. Detective Garrett is on his way. Should be about 20 minutes. You want to wait in your car? I shook my head. The officer went back to his car, but kept watching me. I sat down on the curb across the street. The smell of burned wood hung in the air. Wet ash. Chemicals from whatever the firefighters had used. A neighbor's porch light came on. Mrs. Patterson from 2 doors down. She came out in her bathrobe, saw me, and started crying before she even made it across her yard. She sat next to me on the curb, said she'd seen my mother just yesterday morning. They talked about the garden. Then last night, around 7, she'd smelled smoke. Called 911. By the time the trucks got there, the whole house was engulfed. Detective Garrett arrived 15 minutes later, got out of an unmarked sedan, walked over to where I was sitting. Structure fire. Arson investigator. My mother's body. I'm so sorry for your loss. I asked when it happened. He checked his notes. Yesterday evening. They had already won. Before I even pushed their leader into the pit, they'd already taken what mattered. I sat there and stared at the ruins of the house where I'd grown up. Nothing was left. The detective asked if I knew of anyone who would want to hurt my mother. Any threats, any unusual contact in recent weeks. What could I say? That a cult in the middle of nowhere fed people to a monster underground, and they killed my mother to tie up loose ends? He'd think I was crazy, or in shock, or both. So I said no. Said I couldn't think of anyone. Said my mother was a good person who didn't have enemies. He gave me his card, told me to call if I remembered anything, and said they'd be in touch. I sat on the curb until the police left too, until it was just me in the burned house. My father had run from that church to protect his family. He'd spent 30 years keeping his distance, never looking back, never mentioning it. I'd undone all of it in a few weeks because I found a letter and thought I deserved answers. And my mother had paid the price. I regret participating in a deja vu study written by Castius Ongi. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but let's get into it. I don't really want to get into why, but I lost my job and needed some quick cash. I've done various research studies and medical trials for cash before, so I thought it would be an easy way to get something to help hold me off until I could find another gig. I came across an ad for a medical study that paid surprisingly well, so I signed up without thinking too much of it. The building was huge, and I got turned around. The long, identical, white hallways all meshed together as one in my head as I tried to find room 312. I arrived late, but the staff was kind and understanding. I was told that this study was on deja vu, and that full participation in this study required the insertion of a microchip into the brain. Look, I really didn't want a chip implanted in my head, but this study paid really well, and I needed the money. They told me that deja vu was like a glitch in a particular area of the brain, which they had been able to isolate. Upon insertion, the chip would cause a constant, minor stress to that area of the brain, making deja vu more likely to occur. All I had to do was record the details of what happened leading up to an episode of deja vu that I experienced. That way, they could identify patterns and specific triggers, which they could then use to trigger an episode of deja vu on me inside the lab. There, they could record and monitor the episode for their research. I signed the consent forms and the procedures was done right then and there. It was a bit nerve-wracking to be awake while something went into my skull, but overall, it was relatively quick and painless. I did, however, experience a dull ache at the insertion site afterwards, which was one of the side effects they had listed. The other possible side effects included nausea and insomnia, as well as phantom odors, minor confusion, and increased heart rate during an episode. So I expected to have some side effects. I expected to have some minor confusion, but what I have experienced since then has gone so far beyond that I no longer know what to do. I'll start with my first episode, which was so tame in comparison to the others, but at the time really unsettled me. It was about a week after the insertion. I made my morning coffee the same way I do every single morning. I started up a pot of coffee, took the cream out of the fridge, and grabbed a mug, all while the coffee was brewing. The coffee finished brewing, so I picked up the pot and began to pour the coffee into my cup. That's when I felt it. It came on like a rush, as if I'd ridden a wave backwards in time and was reliving a recording of the moment that had passed only seconds ago. I know I pour my coffee the same exact way every morning, but this was different. I hadn't just poured my coffee like this before, I had lived this very moment. The rush wore off, and I was left in a kind of daze. Unlike any time I'd experienced deja vu in the past, my vision was fuzzy, and I was on autopilot as I poured the last bit of coffee into my mug. I picked up the mug, and I took a sip. It wasn't coffee. The unfamiliar taste caused me to snap out of my daze. The mug was filled with pure cream. Puzzled, I stared at it for some time as I tried to figure out what on earth had just happened. I know I wasn't paying full attention, but I so vividly remember picking up the pot of coffee and pouring it into my mug. But when I looked back, the coffee pot was full and untouched. The cap to the cream sat on the counter, and the container of cream was half empty. They said minor confusion was a side effect that went along with an episode of deja vu, but I started to pour my coffee before the deja vu set in, so it just didn't make sense. It was so unsettling, but I eventually accepted it. Attempted to transfer the cream from my mug back into the container and poured an actual cup of coffee. I convinced myself that it wasn't that big of a deal, which is something I now regret. The second time I felt deja vu was 3 days later. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth, nothing out of the ordinary. It was just as is when I would brush my teeth before bed. I didn't really think too much of it when I was doing. My mind was wandering here and there in a few different directions, never fully focused on the actual act of brushing my teeth, but I was still conscious and aware. Of course, I've brushed my teeth in this same spot before, but when the rush of deja vu hit me, I was certain that I had rewound time and was now reliving this exact experience of brushing my teeth. The way I looked up at myself in the mirror, the exact movements of the bristles sweeping across my teeth, side to side, up and down, the rush faded as I continued to brush. But my mouth tasted absolutely foul, bitter. It burned. It burned so badly and I couldn't breathe. I stood over my kitchen sink, my heart beating violently as I desperately gasped for air, simultaneously spitting out a gritty white foamy substance out of my mouth. I spat and spat, but it was still there. I released the death grip I hadn't even realized I had on my own toothbrush and frantically reached for the faucet. I yanked the water on and shoved my head underneath, the water splashing both inside my mouth and all over my face. A powdery substance remained stuck to the insides of my molars, and I swished the water around aggressively in my mouth in an attempt to get rid of it fully. After several minutes of rinsing and swishing, I turned off the faucet and paused. Everything was quiet, aside from the occasional ping of the water dripping off of my face and into the metal sink. My mouth burned, and the foul taste lingered, but I was okay. My panic was subsiding, and I knew I was okay. The toothbrush I had previously had a death grip on was sitting next to the kitchen sink. It wasn't the toothbrush I'd used to brush my teeth with regularly, but I recognized it. It was the toothbrush I kept underneath my sink to clean with. And for that, I used Comet, the powdered cleaner. This was more than just the unsettling feeling I experienced after the coffee and cream incident. This was chilling. My mouth was still burning, and I couldn't imagine what would have happened if I had swallowed accidentally. I threw up not too long after that, and that night, I hardly slept at all. I planned to call the research clinic as soon as they opened the following morning and have them remove the chip. But of course, the following morning when I called, the clinic was closed. Being unemployed can make you forget what day of the week it is. And that day, I found out, was Saturday. I didn't want to stay home, but I was too scared to leave. On that day, I watched TV. I didn't eat or even brush my teeth. On that day, I did not experience deja vu. The following day, I couldn't bear to stay home. I was so afraid that I'd be alone and something terrible would happen. These mundane tasks, I didn't want to do them. I didn't want to leave, but I forced myself to. I packed my things and went to the gym. I thought that maybe it would be harder to do something stupid while surrounded by so many people. My stomach growled on the drive there, but my mouth still burned. Parts, especially near my back molars, were completely raw. I packed my toothbrush just in case, but I was too scared to brush my teeth again. I probably looked awful, but I didn't care. I hid inside of my baggy hoodie and baseball cap. Despite being hungry and in pain, the workout actually boosted my spirits quite a bit. I felt much safer being around people. And despite feeling terrified that the deja vu would hit me again, for some reason, I felt that I'd rather it hit here. I worked my arms until they refused to move anymore. And then I went to the Stairmaster. I don't know how long I had been climbing the Stairmaster for before the rush hit me, but somehow it hit even stronger than it had the previous times. I felt with all my power that I had stepped on this machine in this exact way, precisely at this exact same time. I had rewound my own timeline and was watching it play out. My vision blurred completely, but I continued to climb. I climbed up and up and up. The rush wore off and I was left in a similar weird daze, but still, I kept climbing, up and up and up. Only now the sound of my feet hitting the stairs sounded different. With every step I took, a metallic clang rang out. It was slippery. It was raining. I slipped and lost my balance. I was jolted out of my daze and instinctively grabbed at the metal post which connected the platform I was on to the handrail. My hands gripped the wet, slippery metal post with what little strength I had left, while my legs dangled in the air about 100 feet up. I was hanging off the side of a fire escape, in the rain, trying desperately not to fall to my death. My fingers turned white as they gripped around the post, but they were sliding off. I was going to fall. I had the most intense boost of adrenaline I've ever had in my life, and somehow managed to pull myself up. My fingers slipped off the pole just as I had pulled myself up. Then I scrambled forwards frantically and clung onto the side of the building. I sat crouched in that position for quite some time. I don't know how long. I never calmed down, but I eventually gained enough courage to begin the climb down. This building looked old and possibly abandoned, and I had no idea how I had gotten there. It sat on the stairs, slowly and carefully lowering myself down one step at a time. I cried when my feet hit the pavement and I saw my car parked on the street. I didn't know where I was, but it felt unsafe. There were several abandoned looking warehouse buildings. Bits of trash were being carried up by the wind and then beaten down by the rain, which was now coming down much more heavily than before. My phone was sitting on the passenger seat, although I didn't know how it got there. Never in my right mind would I leave it there, especially in an area like this. But I picked it up, typed in directions, and drove straight home, shaking and crying the entire time. I don't know how, but I managed to sleep. I woke up early the next morning and stared at my phone until the second it hit 8, which was the time the research clinic opened. My desperation poured through into my voice as I begged the receptionist to let me come in today and get the chip removed. I explained that I was having very severe side effects and needed it removed immediately. She was hesitant but scheduled me for a 3 p.m. appointment. I drove there straight after the phone call and waited in my car for hours. I wasn't going to take any chances. I went in at 2:30. I was sick of waiting. I broke down as soon as I walked into the waiting room. I felt so relieved to be here and finally get this thing removed. One of the nurses put her arm around me and guided me back to one of the patient rooms. She took my vitals and waited with me until the main clinician arrived. I remember feeling so grateful that she waited with me. I didn't want to be alone. I explained everything to the clinician. He had the audacity to try to convince me to keep the chip in, but I wasn't going to budge. Not after what happened. He explained that confusion was a common side effect, but I told him I didn't care. I told him his research wasn't as important as my life, and he reluctantly agreed to remove the chip. They prepared everything for the procedure, and I was placed in the exact same chair I sat in before. When they made the insertion just last week, I sat there in that chair as the clinician spoke to me. He guided me through what he was doing. He told me he was going to make the incision, then said he was going to insert the metal rod used to remove the microchip. I sat as still as I could as the rod was slowly inserted into my head. I knew I had sat in that same chair before. I knew I had that same rod inserted into my head. But now, I felt certain that this familiar feeling wasn't from the insertion. It was from right then. I had already experienced the removal of the chip, and now I was reliving it. I screamed so loud that it made my own ears hurt, and then I went into a daze. Something painful struck my head. It struck again, this time more intense than before. The pain became unbearable as it pounded into my head, over and over again and again in the same spot. My vision was completely blurred, and the smell of blood filled my nose. I snapped out of my daze and nearly vomited due to the pain. My eyes darted from side to side. I was afraid to move, but when I looked around, there was no one there. There were no lab assistants, no monitors, equipment, or tools. I was in a large, dark room. The walls had been torn apart, and water leaked through the cracks in the ceiling. It was dark, damp, and smelled of mold. My head ached terribly, and I instinctively dropped what was in my hand to cover my head, which was bleeding all down my shirt. The clank of metal hit the concrete floor, and I looked down to see a long metal screwdriver covered in blood next to me. I was sitting in this old, rundown warehouse with blood pouring from my head and a screwdriver next to me. No one else was here. I had done this. I hardly remember leaving the warehouse. I had felt so paralyzed inside of there, but I eventually made it outside. My car was parked on the side of the road. It was parked in the same place as yesterday, when I had climbed the fire escape of the building that I now realized was the same building I'd just been in. Again, my phone was on the passenger seat. I was bleeding profusely and not thinking clearly. I called an ambulance, but they never came. I called the clinic, but they didn't pick up. I called an ambulance again, but again, they never came. I sat in my chair for what felt like hours before giving up and driving home. I'm sitting in my bed now, on my phone. I was scrolling for hours and finally decided to write this post. Maybe tomorrow I'll try to go to the hospital, but I'm just not sure of anything right now. I really don't know if I trust anyone to remove the chip, considering what just happened. But I realize now one thing feels certain. As I type this out, it feels so clear. I've typed this very sentence before. Just now. This too. I went back and now I'm here again. This story, these words, I just wrote this. I just wrote this before, and now, just now, I'm writing this again. I'm certain, these words, I'm certain I've written them before. During my last robbery, I found something I wish I hadn't. Written by Sunhead Prime. At the outset, I should tell you I'm a thief. Not a classless smash and grab guy or a lowly pickpocket. Those require no planning or strategy beyond move quickly and be ready to run. I'm a 4th generation cat burglar. I'm very good at my job. If everything goes right, you don't notice I've been there for weeks, if ever. I understand most people find this kind of work deplorable. I'm okay with that. I could go on and on about how the system steals from us all the time, and how the rich use their ill-gotten gains to subjugate us and give you the whole I'm really a Robin Hood type figure, but I will spare you all that rationally. I'm a thief because I'm good at it and was raised in a culture that values it. There are other reasons, but it's not worth getting into them. To be a cat burglar isn't just about breaking into a house and cleaning out a safe. That's part of the job, sure, but like an iceberg, most of it remains hidden from view. My father used to tell me, being a thief is being prepared to be bored out of your mind. He wasn't wrong about that anyway. Wrong about a lot of other things, but I digress. Once I narrow in on the address, I have to sit. That sounds easy, but it's not. It's boring. Clean the garage, boring. Waiting in the line at the DMV, boring, but it has to be done. Veg before ice cream, boy. Veg before ice cream. That again. He told me this while housing a sleeve of Fig Newtons before dinner. Much to my chagrin, he was right. Again. Outside of watching a house for hours on end, there are so many dozens of other things to keep track of. Has anybody seen you while you're casing the place? What hours do the servants work? What's the best way onto the property? How do I get in and out of the house with little chance of being caught? Each question needs to be answered beforehand. Finally, the big question. What's the security situation? A lot of these McMansions come pre-built with high-tech security features in place for the first year. That's when the lower cost prices disappear. Most people, even millionaires, will cut off services at that point. They keep the signs, sure, but not the actual equipment. That's gone like disco and ain't never coming back. Why? There are two major reasons. First, the rich live in a bubble and don't believe anyone can get to them. Money enables hubris. Second, rich people are the cheapest people in the world. Why pay for the real thing when a cheap lookalike will do? Capitalism's beating heart is to make the most money by spending the least amount of it. The illusion of security is cheaper than actual security. The night of the robbery, I felt good. Prepared, I'd watched, noted everyone's daily schedule, marked my entrance and exits, knew where the primary bedroom was located. I even wore my lucky shirt. I waited until I saw the Uber leave and then started my half-hour timer. It's been my experience that the help empties out not long after the boss leaves. Cat's away and all that. As if on cue, the servants bolted as soon as the Uber was out of sight. I still waited the 30 minutes. Like a shitty magic spell, stragglers can transform into witnesses. Seeing none, I made my way onto the property. The most tense moment of any heist is when you're about to break in. Even in all black, even in the dark, there's still a chance someone could see you. A nosy neighbor, a dog walker, a panhandler, anyone. Time works against you. Too slow, you draw attention. Too fast, you make mistakes. A steady hand and a calm demeanor are key here. I have those in spades. This is also the moment that you can't plan for. Did you miss bars on the window? Are there more than one lock on the door?
Did someone stay home? Is the alarm system on? Are there cameras rolling? It's a gamble that can cost you your freedom, your life. It's also a rush. I've discovered that most of the time, upper floor windows in McMansions are unlocked. The thinking goes, well, we have several layers of security before anyone could get to that point. Why bother? I get it. It's a mistake, but one most people would make. Hanging on the outside downspout, I sighed in relief. The window was unlocked. I pushed it open the window and climbed in. My moccasins softly touched the floor, making no noise. They're not the most durable in the wild, but inside, they are worth their weight in gold. No tread to ID, no noise on carpets, comfortable as all hell. The room was dark, and I had no desire to change that. I keep a tiny pen light in my pocket for that reason. I've become so accustomed to seeing the world in the tiny circle of light that my eyes quickly attune to the dark. A cat in every sense. I assume the truly valuable things, wills, bank account information, holy grails, would be in a safe. I don't crack safes. Well, not in people's homes anyway. Too complicated, too messy. I was after jewels. Thanks to my extensive history, I knew where to find them. Even in the dark, you could tell how obscenely large the walk-in closet was. It wasn't even fair to call it a walk-in closet, more like a studio apartment for clothes. 3 of the walls were lined with suits and dresses that may have been worn once, maybe twice. Some still had tags on them. The last wall was dedicated to shoes, red-bottom Louis Vuittons and rare Jordans as far as the eye or penlight could see. But what caught my eye was the makeup vanity carved into the wall like Petra in these Sharrow Mountains. More specifically, the 3 jewelry boxes sitting there. I moved to them like a zealot to the temple. This was what I came for. My haul would keep me in the black for a while, unless it was costume jewelry. The cocktease of stones, Dad would say. I pried open the first lid and smiled. Dozens of bejeweled brooches shimmered before me, like the hundreds of eyes of some mythological monster. All shapes and sizes, most ugly but authentic. The genuine article has a certain touch to them, a heft. These were legit. I plucked a few from the bottom of the box and placed them into my bag. My fingers found something that had an odd shape. I pulled it out to get a closer look. A triangle inside a pentagon. It was on the small side, but was full of diamonds. Valuable, very. But something felt wrong about it. I dropped it back in. The longer you do this job, the more adept you get at picking the right things to steal. The secret is to only take 2 or 3 pieces at a time. Of the few you take, ensure they're plain looking, nothing memorable. Unique pieces are hard to fence. If they end up in a pawn shop or a cop finds them, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump until it's traced back to you. Iron handcuffs, jail time, hard pass on my end. As I put the piece in my bag, my light started flickering. I gently tapped it against the vanity. As I did, I glanced up into the vanity mirror. My heart seized. There was a figure standing near the open window. Out of instinct, I snapped around, ready to rumble, but the figure was gone. I flipped off my lights and pocketed it. I turned back to the mirror and my breath caught. It was standing in the closet doorway now. I balled my fist. I wasn't going to jail. I'd go down swinging. But when I spun to meet them eye to eye, the figure was gone. Again, I was confused. I know I saw someone. I couldn't tell you the details, but there was a person standing there. Watching like, well, like they weren't surprised to see me in there. The sound of footsteps running from the primary bedroom down the hall echoed through the empty house. After a beat, I heard a door slam somewhere on the floor. My legs wobbled underneath me. My mouth was dry. I'd experienced plenty of odd shit on the job, but a ghost? Never. Unless it wasn't a ghost. If it wasn't, I was truly up shit's creek without a paddle. A person could be worse, but would be worse. A ghost can't call the cops. If you like fucking cardboard tubes or lubed up dudes, jail's the bee's knees, Brian. Dad again. I was 8 when he shared this pearl of wisdom with me. What can I say? It stuck with me. It had become my guiding principle. Make smart decisions or learn to squeeze the Charmin. My eyes caught the billowing curtains. It snapped me out of my daze. Exit, yes, but maybe not. Curiosity urged me to go down the hall and see what had been watching me. The thought germinated and bloomed before my rational mind ripped it out of its roots. Get out now, idiot. I started for the window, but stopped myself. Clean up, and then go. As I turned to shut the boxes, I heard the familiar slam of a window. Someone had shut my exit route. Fuck. I turned and, naturally, there wasn't anyone there except the sound of footsteps running back down the hall. Another door slammed. Holy hell, I said. My tongue felt fat in my mouth. I swiftly cleaned up and made my way to the window. As I got there, I heard something every thief dreads. The front door opened. I knew it wasn't the one I'd heard before because I heard the loud, boorish homeowner come barging in. I know you're up there. I saw it on camera. My fingers gripped the window and I tried to yank it up. It wouldn't budge. Felt like invisible hands held it down. Panic spiked my blood. My fingertips prickled with fear. I had to hide now. I retreated into the closet. As I did, I heard the door down the hall open up again and footsteps raced to the stairs. They stopped at the landing, turned, and ran back to the room, slamming the door as they did. This seemed to agitate the owner. He increased his rate, racing up the stairs 2 at a time. He bellowed, "You better pray to God I don't catch you. I'm going to take my time making you bleed. So much so that your final ascension will feel like a relief." I didn't know what any of that meant and didn't want to find out. The diversion, though, gave me enough time to find a spot to hide. There was only one that would work, behind the racks of clothes. It wasn't ideal, but I was out of options. I split the clothes like I was Moses parting the Red Sea and slid into the gap behind them. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Another sound, a cell phone ringing, joined them there. God damn it, the voice spat. "You're lucky, you little bitch. Run now, but you can't hide from me. I'm everywhere." After another ring, he picked up. "Pete, buddy, what's going on?" His tone had changed entirely. My heart was zooming. Felt like a booger sugar addict running wind sprints. I've been close to being caught before, had to slip the fuzz once or twice, but never found myself in a situation like this. I tried to keep my cool, but my body didn't get the message. I trembled. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Fat droplets rolled down my face. I took a deep breath to try to recenter myself. It didn't work. "Trust me, Pete. I get it. I know how many strings you have to pull to get me involved." The man was now in a primary bedroom. I prayed he'd avoid this closet. But when the overhead light popped on, I knew I was as good as fucked. He was coming in here. I leaned back against the wall, as if it would eventually absorb me. I kept my hands balled into fist in case I had to come out swinging. Loath as I was about to admit it, I was trapped. A thief's worst nightmare. No way out without announcing myself. Worse, I had a limited line of sight. Even if there were a chance to leave, I'd have a hard time seeing it. A man dressed in an expensive tuxedo speed walked into the closet. He was older, perhaps in his mid-50s, but didn't look it. Not at first blush. Good skin, finely trimmed mustache, and a head full of slicked back black hair. He looked like a cartoon drawing of a crooked politician had come to life. "I did my due diligence. No family connections, no internet profile, no warrants, nothing, and nobody. Perfect for the gathering." He paced as he spoke. When he came by where I was hiding, through these suit jackets, I could get a better look at him. Upon closer inspection, the man's actual age shone through. His face bore telltale signs of plastic surgery. Plastic, uncanny valley look. While most of his hair was jet black, he had the budding growth of silver, poly walnut style wings around his temple. The corners of his eyes and mouth had the faintest of cracks. Yes, he was that close to me. The man pressed the phone against his ear and held it in a place where his shoulder as he shimmed out his suit jacket. He flung the expensive jacket onto the ground as if it were covered in ants. The phone never left his ear. Peter, seriously, I know. I get the scope, okay? Yes, I know. It's why I double back. I'm changing. I know they're very particular. Only get one shot at a first impression." He stopped directly in front of me and shook his head. Would I get a first impression? His conversation engrossed him. That thrilled me. If he had even been the tiniest bit bored, he might have noticed a face staring back at him from the Armani wing of his closet. Just then, the lights in the closet flickered. The man looked up at the blinking bulbs and shook his head. As he did, I spotted something hidden away across the closet. Standing half in the shadows was the figure I'd seen earlier. It wasn't a person. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn and run away as fast as my jello legs would take me, but I couldn't do anything but shut my eyes and wish it away, so that's what I did.
Christ,
The man said.
no, not you. The fucking closet light is on the fritz again. I know I should have hired your guy, but Mary was so big on the asshole who built this out. What could I do? Happy wife, happy life, right?
Pete said something, and the man guffawed.
Should I say happy second wife, happy life? Nothing would have pleased that first bitch.
As the two men laughed, I felt a presence appear next to me behind the clothes. A feeling in the animal part of my brain. A predator was near. Flee. Run for the safety of the bush, little rabbit. But I couldn't. Not even when I felt the hot breath on my neck. This got me to wrench open my eyes. I turned and expected to find some biblical ghoul waiting to devour my soul. Instead, the man's hand reached for a suit jacket beside me, a $300,000 watch on his wrist, the salt and pepper arm hair escaping his starched white shirt. Money to burn. What I didn't see or feel was the ghoul. It was gone. The light flickering also stopped. The creature's absence took away some of the tension, but didn't set my mind at ease. I was still trapped. If this guy stumbled or moved his hand 3 inches, he'd hit me square in the face. I held my breath, afraid my faint breathing might alert him. He yanked the jacket off the hanger. The hanger swung back and hit me square in the right eye. I slammed my lid closed and squeezed hard, praying that would take away the pain, but knowing it wouldn't. I wanted to rub it. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up and down in pain. But all I could do was trap the pain in my body and wait for him to leave. The light above started to strobe again. That, coupled with my wounded eye, made it damn near impossible to see anything clearly. But my ears worked just fine. Over the man's tasteless jabbering, I heard floorboards outside the closet creak.
Pete, let me tell you, I'm so excited to join up with the organization. I think you guys are going to love the tasty little...
The light shut off. So did the man's mouth. I used the darkness to scratch at my eye like a 1980s DJ. I blinked once, twice, 3 times. It stayed open. It hurt like hell, but I could see again. Or I would be able to, if the light hadn't just shut off.
Jesus Christ, I hate this goddamn closet. No, just let me let you go. I gotta check something out before I leave again. I know, I won't be late.
He hung up his phone, but fuzzled with it, trying to turn on the flashlight. The screen's weak light lit up the edges of his face. He looked otherworldly. A hideous goon god had not intended to replicate. His fumbling fingers finally found the flashlight. As soon as he flipped it on, his phone died.
God damn it, Chinese crap. How does this bullshit cost $1,000?
The only light now poured in from the open closet door, right near where I'd heard the creaking. My cat burglar trained eyes had adjusted to the low light. I strained my neck, trying to get a peek at the door, but the man's body had come between me and the exit. Mumbling to himself, he strode toward it. Before he could leave, though, something quickly ran into the bedroom and slammed the closet door shut. I heard the turn of a lock before the sprinting of feet as they ran down the hallway. The man screamed and slammed into the door. The walls rattled, but the door held firm. He shouldered it again as hard as he could. It was a dumb mistake. He crumpled to the floor, moaning in pain and grabbing at his shoulder.
Fucking hell,
he said, rubbing his wound. He kicked the bottom of the door twice, not in any attempt to open it, but out of frustration.
I'm gonna beat someone's ass.
He kicked the bottom of the door a 3rd time for good measure. He pushed himself back up, muttering curses under his breath, and made his way to the vanity. He felt along the side of the counter until he found a latch and pulled it. With a click, the vanity revealed itself to be a door into a hidden room. An eerie white light emanated from the room, and I realized it was the glow of dozens of TV screens. A panic room. I couldn't move to get a closer look, but it was clear he was searching for screens for something, or more likely, someone. He walked deeper into the panic room, and I took that moment to shuffle, ever so quietly, a little closer to where he was.
I fucking knew it,
the man yelled. The hate and menace in his voice made me wince. Seconds later, he came storming out of the panic room with something in his hands. I couldn't make it out at first, but when he swung it against the door, I realized it was an engineer's hammer. Whump, 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 ka-ching. The handle snapped off after several swings. Light from the outside room poured through the hole. The man pressed his face against the opening and scanned the primary bedroom. He put his mouth to it and yelled,
I know you're out. When I find you, you're gonna wish you were dead.
For dramatic flourish, he booted the closet door. It violently swung open, slamming into the doorstop and vibrating like a tuning fork. He walked through, clutching the hammer hard in his hand. He had murder on his mind. I was just glad he wasn't coming after me. The now familiar sound of footsteps running down the hall prompted the man to sprint after them. I heard a door slam across the house. The rhythmic pounding of the hammer on the door handle soon followed, creating the worst sounding drum and bass track of all time. Last man at the bar fucks the ugliest broad. Dad from my memories, confirming what my gut already knew. It was time to split. I pushed through the clothes and crept toward the closet door. I had a clean path through the window. The man was preoccupied with his hammer. I didn't want to imagine where the ghoul was. I was 15 feet from freedom. So why couldn't I convince myself to leave? I knew I should. Self-preservance screamed at me to fling open the window, shimmy shimmy shake down the drain pipe, and sprint to my car. I felt my dad pushing me from behind the grave. Move, you idiot. The fuzz will be here soon. But something was holding me back. If this guy killed someone, and I didn't stop it, I'd never forgive myself. I'd have that person's blood on my hands. I couldn't carry that weight. I'm a crook, not a bastard. Sighing, I changed course and headed for the panic room door. I needed to see what was happening. I also needed to find out where the cameras were located in the house, so I wouldn't inadvertently show up on one. It might also show me another pathway to escape if the need arose. My mouth hit the floor as I walked into the panic room. A bank of monitors displayed nearly every inch of the house inside and out. I had spotted the outside cameras while I cased the place and found a dead zone between them. That was not true inside. There was a camera pointed directly at the window I had climbed through. There was one looking at me right now. Fuck. The man wailing on the handle caught my eye. While it only took a few direct hits to dislodge the first handle, this one was not cooperating with him. I watched him take 6 massive swings, nothing. It held firm. Top quality handle. Adamantium-esque. I looked around for anything else I could use for a weapon and came up empty. Maybe there would be something I could use in the bedroom. With the man focused on trying to break down the door, I eased my way out of the closet and into the room. The place was spotless. Nothing dangerous in here but unearthed wealth and few scruples. There wasn't anything I could use to counteract a hammer swing. Damn it, I muttered. Who are you? Came a voice from under the bed. I screamed in fright, but a quick slap of my hand over my mouth stopped it from escaping into the wider world. I glanced down at the floor under the bed. Were all my worst childhood fears coming true at the same time? Despite every horror story advising me not to, I got down on the floor and looked under the bed. A scared woman in her early 20s was staring back at me. Her eyes were wide, and I could see her trembling. She was filthy, but I'm not sure if she entered the house that way. A sour stench surrounded her, and I realized she'd been here for a while. She had broken and bloody fingernails, as if she'd been trying to pry open a stuck door. On the back of her hand, I saw raised pink hillocks of fleshly branded skin, a shape that I instantly recognized, a triangle inside a pentagon. Who are you? She asked again. Her voice was a vapor. Might as well be honest. A thief, I said. Who the hell are you? He kidnapped me. He's been holding me for 3 weeks, the woman said, her voice breaking. He was gonna Her voice caught again. He's a monster. Suddenly, the phone conversations the man had with Pete made more sense. It chilled me. Whatever he had planned for this woman would not be pleasant. What's your name? Yanez, she said. Brian, I said. He's busy, Yanez. Let's get out of here. I can't. What? Why? Not yet. He's chasing shadows, I said, my voice transforming from a whisper to a yell. Now's the chance. I promised him I'd help him finish the job. You promised the monster? No, Inez said. At once, all the lights in the house flicker and shut off. With every electrical machine off, the house felt still, abnormally quiet. I could feel my heartbeat. It vibrated through my whole body. Wait, no, this wasn't my heart. The entire house was vibrating. I promised the demon I conjured.
Who the fuck is in my bedroom?
The man yelled from down the hall.
She's my prize, you hear? Tell Pete to find his own goddamn lamb.
Get under here, Brian, Inez yelled. I wasn't going to argue. I dropped to the floor and army crawled under the bed. As soon as my legs were safely under, the entire house shuddered again, rolling like an earthquake. My stomach flipped, and I chewed back the vomit that had charged the gates. As fast as it came, it left, both my bile and the house. It was still again. The only noise I heard was the chain of the fan gently tapping against the dome light. Whatever you do, Inez whispered, don't look at it. I shut my eyes. A concussive explosion blew out the door down the hall. I heard the man cry out before I heard his body thumped against the wall. A sickening crack of bones snapping on impact echoed down the hall. What the fuck? 2 thunderous, house-rattling stomps followed. The man was whimpering in pain and fear and God knows what else. I heard him stand, but before he could flee, the air shattered with the sounds of dozens of different people's agonizing screams and a low, rumbling growl. "Oh my God," the man yelled, the panic in his voice palpable. His brain's terror messages finally connected with his legs. The next thing we heard was the thumping of footsteps rushing towards us. Why not leave, I thought. The stairs to the exit were right there. Then it dawned on me. He was trying to get to his panic room. The place where he believed his money had bought him security. His sanctuary. His safe place. What he didn't understand was that there would be no protection there. He wasn't going to find a shelter to shield him from the bomb. He was going to find his tomb. As soon as he crossed the threshold of his door, an invisible force shoved him in the back. Ragdoll-like, he flew through the air, crashing into the window. It shattered. Glass fell around him like those shimmering jewels I'd seen on the brooch. The man landed with a thud next to the bed. Despite Inez's warnings, I opened up my eyes as his body crashed near us. I saw the man. He saw me. Blood leaked out from dozens of slices across his arms and face. There was a burn mark on his back, and his skin sizzled. You could smell the stink of cooked meat. I think about what went through his brain at that moment. An unholy monster was chasing him, threatening him. His life was on the line. He's just suffered traumatic injuries. Then he sees a strange man hiding under his bed with the woman he planned to use for some ungodly, horrific ritual. Before the chaos of the moment returned, he had to think, what the hell is going on here? Who the hell are you? The man attempted to stand, but a scaled, covered hand seized him in an iron grip. He struggled, yelled, pleaded, but he couldn't break free. The creature let out another choir's worth of screaming voices and dragged the man toward the closet by his hair. The man screamed at us to help, but we didn't move an inch.
Have mercy, please. Have a family. This isn't right, please.
I glanced at Inez. She was stoic. I wondered if the man had felt the same indifference when he abducted and beat her. Each time the demon's cloven hoof hit the carpet, it ignited the fabric. Little fires everywhere. The man screamed as the closet door slammed closed behind him. The next sounds we heard were the snapping of bones and the dying screams of a condemned man. Let's go, Inez said, shimmying out from under the bed. Don't have to tell me twice. Several of the smaller fires had coalesced into a larger blaze. The house was a goner. The flames blocked the doorway to the stairs. Inez held up her hand to shield herself from the heat, but it was in vain. She turned to me, eyes pleading. What do we do? I got this, I said. I dashed to the window and knocked out the remaining broken glass. Smoke poured out into the night air. Come on, I yelled. Climb down the drain pipe. I have a car nearby. Inez nodded and nearly leapt out the window. She moved down the drain pipe so quickly, I lost sight of her almost instantly. I climbed out the window and stopped to look back in. The black smoke filling up the room made seeing anything impossible. I felt my tool bag strapped to me. I reached in and found the brooches I stole. Holding them up to my face, I could see dozens of little fires reflecting off their surfaces. Without giving it a second thought, I tossed everything I took into the house. I don't need a curse following me. Hurry, please. The firemen are coming, Inez said. She was right. Fire and police. Probably. I didn't want to be here when they arrived. I can't imagine Yanez had any desire to stick around any longer as well. Once I was on the ground, I helped her climb the outer fence and clambered over after her. As we hit the ground, I saw dozens of neighbors coming over to watch the show. None of them seemed to clock us. I grabbed Yanez's hand and led her into the darkness away from any potential witnesses. We walked the 3 blocks to where I had stashed my car. The neighborhood was alive with the approaching sirens and burning mansion. Yanez sat down on the curb, put her head in her hands, and sobbed. I wanted to comfort her, but wasn't sure if I should. "Are you okay?" I finally offered. "No," she said. "But when is life ever okay?" I laughed. Got me there. She spat towards the mansion. "I hope his soul rots in hell." I'd say he got what he deserved. I had so many questions for her, but didn't feel like now was the best time for him. Well, there was time for one, even if I wanted to avoid asking. My mouth just went for it. "How did you do that?" "The demon?" I nodded. "I prayed for it." "But you're praying to God, right?" I said, confused. "I prayed for revenge," she said, standing, and something finally heard me. "Did you promise it anything? Do you owe it your soul or something?" She gave me a weak smile and wiped away her tears. I would never get that answer. She softly touched my shoulder, nodded her head in thanks, and started walking down the street. I wanted to call out, to offer her a ride somewhere, to ask her those 100 questions, to offer her help. She didn't want it, didn't need it. She operated on a level that was higher than I could even conceive, dabbled in things I couldn't imagine, dark things, things I didn't want to imagine ever again. Despite my curiosity, I didn't follow her. She needed peace, solitude. A thought came to me in that moment. When you've got what you came to get, you leave. That was Dad again. He was talking about breaking and entering, but I couldn't help but feel like it worked now too. We both got our freedom back. A second chance we thought we'd never get. When you got what you came to get, you leave. Thanks, Dad. There's a reason the forest behind our house is fenced off. I wish I'd listened. Written by First Difference 904. When my wife Sarah and I bought the house, it felt like a dream come true. Quiet neighborhood, plenty of trees, and a big backyard with a rusted, overgrown fence running along the far edge. The realtor said the forest behind it was undeveloped county land. No trails, no utilities, no trespassing. She mentioned the fence was probably an old property divider. But it wasn't just a fence. It was nearly 8 feet tall, made of rusted iron, with twisted, sharp points along the top, like it was built to keep something in, not out. Right in the center, hidden behind vines and moss, was a gate, welded shut with thick seams of metal and rust. On the inside of that gate, our side, someone had carved a single word into the metal: stay. At first, we thought it was some strange leftover from the previous owners. Maybe they were paranoid. Maybe they had kids and wanted to scare them from wandering into the woods. Now I think they were trying to warn us. The dog noticed it first. Bear is usually friendly, dumb as a rock, but loyal. After we moved in, he refused to go near the fence. Wouldn't even step into the backyard. He'd stand at the sliding door, growling softly, tail low, ears pinned. Then the dream started. Sarah said she kept dreaming about the woods, dense black trees packed tighter than they should be. She said she heard things walking just out of sight, shapes moving between the trunks. I shrugged it off, told her it was stress. New house, new environment, normal adjustment stuff. Then I started having the same dreams. And then it got worse. One night last week, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. Not from the noise, not from a nightmare. I just knew I had to wake up. The house was silent. Even Bear wasn't snoring. I got up and looked out the back window. There, standing inside the fence, on the other side of the welded gate, I couldn't see much, just a tall silhouette, pale, almost white, barely human-shaped. It didn't move, didn't run when I turned on the porch light. It just raised a long, thin arm and pointed at me. I blinked. It was gone. The next morning, I found bare footprints in the dew. Human-looking, but wrong. Toes too long, arches too low. They led from the gate, across the backyard, and stopped right beneath our bedroom window. That night, Sarah said I was talking in my sleep. Not mumbling, whispering. She said I kept repeating the same phrase over and over again. Let me back in. I remember now. Let me back in. I don't remember any of it, but she swears she saw me get up around 2 a.m., unlock the back door, and stand by the fence, just staring. She said I whispered something to the gate, and something whispered back. Last night was the worst. I woke to Sarah shaking me, tears in her eyes. The gate, she said. Listen. I held my breath. In the silence, I heard it. Metal groaning. A slow, dragging, shrieking noise. Rusted hinges straining. We ran to the window. The gate was open, bent inward like something had forced its way through the welds. I grabbed a flashlight and went out barefoot, heart pounding. The air near the gate was colder, still, like the woods themselves were watching. And that's when I saw it. The word on the gate, stay, was gone, scratched over with deep, jagged gouges. Now it said, welcome home. I don't know what I did. I don't know what's calling to me from those woods, but something is. Something that remembers me. And I think I'm starting to remember it too. When I was 11 years old, my family was in a car accident. Written by Snooze Suggestions 2081. We were coming home from my sister's soccer game. We kept asking Dad to stop at McDonald's. He gave us the typical, we have food at home, and money doesn't grow on trees talk. I think we were wearing him down. He looked at my mother, whispered something, and started to change lanes. We were getting excited in the back seat. Our house was only a mile or so down the road, and my dad was taking an unexpected turn. We knew not to keep asking at this point. Dad loved little surprises, little deceptions, like when he told me we need to stop at the bank after school, and instead he brought me some ice cream. Or the time he woke us up early on a Saturday for a doctor's appointment, only to bring us mini golfing into the arcade. Mom secretly loved when he did this. She loved how far he would go to surprise us, even if it was just a Happy Meal. The arrow turned green and Dad started driving again. I was too busy thinking about what toy would come with my meal. I didn't see anything. I heard Dad shout, "Oh my God!" Then everything went black. I woke up seconds later. At least, I felt like it was only seconds later. I wasn't in the car anymore. My vision was fuzzy. The lights were so bright. It felt like I was staring at the sun. I just wanted to wipe the sleep from my eyes, but my body felt like it was 1,000 pounds. I started to feel panicked. I heard a voice say, "Hey buddy, it's okay, easy now." I looked in the direction of the voice. It was a lady. She was purple. My vision was slowly coming back to me. Things around me were starting to take shape. No, she's not purple. It's her shirt. In her pants, it's a nurse. Did Dad really bring us to the doctor's office instead of McDonald's? I know that can't be true, but nothing makes sense right now. I feel the panic inside of me growing. It's okay. Try to calm down. You've been through a lot. Your parents will be so happy to know that you're awake. The nurse had a calming voice. I don't know why I'm here, but she makes me feel safe. I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. What happened? Where's my mom? How did I get here? My brain was racing. I tried to speak, but all I could say was, what? The nurse told me that my family was in a car accident. Someone sped through a red light while my dad was turning and crashed into us. She said that we must have had an angel looking out for us because everyone in our car survived, and she couldn't say the same for the other car. Apparently, I took the most damage. She says I've been in a coma for 5 days. At first, they didn't believe I was going to make it, but I started showing signs of improvement after the 3rd day. She sat with me another minute or so, then told me she was going to get my parents. They must have been worried sick. Mom was probably biting her nails to the bone. She always bites her nails when she gets stressed out. I'm sure Dad is blaming himself, even if it wasn't his fault. Jenny must be so scared. She's always been the nervous type. She still comes into my room every time there's a thunderstorm. I'd hate to see how she was when she thought her big brother was going to die. But the nice nurse lady did say that my family survived, and now I'm awake. That means that everything is going to be okay. Or at least that's what I thought until the door at the hospital opened again. When the nurse walked back into the room, there were 2 people behind her, a man and a woman. They had bandages on their faces, and the man had a cast on his arm. "Oh, thank God," the woman said as she walked up to my bedside. She had tears in her eyes. The man stayed back a step, with a hand on the woman's shoulder. He said, "I told you he was a fighter. I knew you'd pull through." This isn't right. Maybe my eyes were still adjusting. No, it can't be. That doesn't sound like them either. The woman leans in to hug me, and I flinch. There must be a mistake. I don't know these people. Where are my parents?" "Don't be silly," the woman says while wiping the tears away from her face. "It's me, baby. It's Mom." Now, I'm 100% certain these people are my parents. My mom would never call me baby. She hates pet names. She won't even call me Matt. It's always Matthew. I can feel the panic lump in my throat again. I begin speaking louder, almost shouting, "You're not my mom. I don't know you. Where's my mom? Where's my dad? And where's Jenny?" The woman slowly backs away, turning her head. She looks over to the nurse. Is he okay?" Her voice is trembling. He doesn't recognize me." The nurse steps forward. After severe trauma, sometimes people can suffer short-term memory loss. He may be disoriented and need some time to get his bearings. I started shouting louder, almost screaming now. "I know who my parents are. They are not my parents." I pointed directly at the pair to emphasize my point. And where's my sister? Where's Jenny?" "Sweetie, who's Jenny?" "You don't have a sister," the woman said in hysterics. "Nurse, you have to do something. There must be some kind of brain damage." "Sweetie," again. My mother would scoff if she heard someone call me sweetie. My fight or flight senses are kicking in. My panic turns to rage. I start thrashing in my bed, trying to find the strength to stand up and leave this nightmare. I'm connected to too many wires and machines. I don't even know where to begin. The man is holding on to the woman in the corner. She's still crying, but I can't be bothered by it. The nurse rushes over to my bed. She's trying to calm me down, but it's no use. She hits a button in the side of the bed. In seconds, the man and woman are pushed out of the way by a group of nurses trying to restrain me. They're holding on to me and trying to keep me from hurting myself. Once they realized that I wouldn't calm down on my own, the nice nurse lady said, "We're going to have to sedate him." One of the other nurses rushes out and back with a small bottle and a syringe. They held down my leg and stuck me, injecting the fluid into me. It was warm. My arms started feeling heavy again. I was lacking the ability to speak, to fight back. Before I lost consciousness, I looked to my side and saw the man and woman again. They were standing in the doorway. The last thing I remembered seeing before everything went black was the woman's face.